A downpour lashed relentlessly against a lone tent. Outside, a horde of the undead had congregated. Frantic pounding echoed from the door. A desperate voice pleaded to be allowed inside. He cried out his name was Jong Hung. Within, survivors hid while he desperately shrieked for salvation. But the entrance was barricaded by 3 young men. One of them asked what their next move would be. Just then, a blonde girl's voice pierced the air, commanding them to let the boy in. She argued Jong Hung was a friend, and they couldn't just forsake him. So, she demanded they open the door now. However, one of the guys declared her insane. He was certain the boy was already infected by the ghouls. The blonde retorted that it made no difference. She was their appointed class president, and she refused to ever abandon her peers. She would bear full responsibility for the outcome. She declared that leaving him to his fate, screaming outside, was no different than committing murder. One of the guys clenched his jaw in frustration. He faced his companion, a boy known as Yabai, and declared he would unseal the door. He told Yabai to bolt it the second the person got in. Before Yabai could even object, the countdown began. Tension spiked as he reached the count of 3. He twisted the handle, but in that fatal instant, in that single moment, Yabai was shoved by the boy, who had already become a monster. Absolute shock filled the room as our protagonist screamed, a warning that Yabai was already contaminated. The blonde fled as everyone began crying out for rescue. Our poor hero raised his arm to shield himself from the teeth. Inevitably, his flesh was savagely torn. In that very moment, he convulsed in agony, bizarrely receiving fragmented visions. On that day, he had lost his limb. The monsters overran everything as survivors tried to flee. Soon after, the entire city had fallen to the world's end. A cloaked figure questioned if he was certain of his actions. A doctor observed him, and he understood he had only 2 paths. His hand gripped the door's lever. The first was his own survival, and the second was pure vengeance. Now, he was thrust back to the present, just before the door was breached. After surviving a lifetime in the apocalypse, missing an arm, he had returned to the moment it all began. Outside, Jiang continued his assault, begging for entry as the blonde again demanded they unseal the door. She declared herself the class representative. She would not turn her back on her classmates. Yabai knew her as Ruoxi, yet wondered at her youthful appearance. She yelled, asking if they were deaf, to let Zhang inside, because failing to do so would make them murderers. Yabai reveled. His intricate plan had succeeded completely. He was reborn to reshape this broken world. He then addressed the self-righteous representative. He warned her that Zhang Hong, the one outside, was likely bitten by a zombie. So, how would she handle the inevitable fallout? She countered that since nobody witnessed him being attacked, there was no definite proof, and as their leader, she would accept the full weight of her decision. Yebai's lips curled into a smile. Very well. He grabbed her hand, suggesting that if that were true, she should be the one to personally open the door. Ruoxi was taken aback. The other girls gasped, shocked he would tell her to do it. The representative furiously shouted at him, claiming he was no man for asking a woman to face danger. But he retorted that for someone risking absolutely nothing, she was certainly projecting a false sense of virtue. He told her that when it came down to it, she was nothing more than a hypocrite. Ruoxi screamed back, telling him to be silent. She vowed to open the door, for she had never known fear. She branded them all as cowards and demanded they move aside. With that, she turned the knob, and in that same instant, Zhang Hung burst in, already transformed just like before. Everyone inside the room froze in terror. The door crashed to the floor as Ruoxi rose to her feet. But that's when a new horror seized her. The infected Zhang Hung stood inches from her face. He lunged at her without a moment's hesitation. Panic erupted as everyone in the room scrambled to escape. She seized the boy standing beside her, crying that she was terrified before he could even move. She shoved him forward, yelling for him to shield her. But a powerful kick came crashing down. It was Yabai who sent his boot into her ribs. Our hero had thrown her as a sacrifice for Zhang Hung. A cold smile touched his lips as the zombie seized her waist. The monster lunged directly for her neck. But in that critical instant, someone seized a screwdriver and drove it through the zombie's skull. The poor girl was soaked in gore, while our hero wore a wicked grin. She stumbled and fell outside the doorway, trapped in a zombie's embrace, turning to Yabai to beg for her life. But he recalled the suffering he endured in his past existence, all because of this same girl's persecution. He lifted the fallen door from the ground and began to seal the exit. She shrieked, asking what he thought he was doing with that. He sealed her fate on the other side. He turned to the others and demanded why they were not securing that door. Afraid and intimidated, the group scrambled, saying they would barricade the entrance. They quickly stacked up all the furniture, crates, and any ladders they could find. Outside, Ruoxi continued to pound, crying out what they were doing, while she desperately cried for assistance. Everyone inside was blocking off the way. She kept fighting, yelling she was their class president. She screamed she couldn't be abandoned like this. The other girls were too terrified to do a thing. Meanwhile, the rest of them kept fortifying the room. Yabai remained still, observing the entire scene. Time passed, and at long last the storm subsided. The group noticed that they could no longer hear Ruoxi's screams. Now, everyone within the room was terrified of Yabai for kicking their so-called representative. From what they could all remember, he was once an exceptionally gentle soul. So why did he now seem like a completely different person? Yabai turned to face them at that moment. The girls were all huddled, terrified and weeping. The protagonist wondered why it appeared everyone was afraid of him. Hesitantly, they all answered that they were not. The blonde-haired boy offered him his thanks, admitting that if it had not been for him, he would have been sacrificed by the representative. Everyone quickly began to take Yabai's side. They said that girl was a treacherous snake, and only wanted to feed the guy to save herself. Yabai smirked. He noted that since they were all so bold, they should unseal the door because he wanted to scout outside. The group looked at him, completely terrified. They questioned why he would ever want to go out. He then mused that kicking her had not been a wise choice, and he wanted to check on her current condition. His so-called friends, however, protested, saying it was madness with all the zombies prowling outside. But Yabai roared, commanding everyone to get out of his path. Scared into submission, of course, the group began to clear the barricade from the door. They opened it, and he cautiously stepped into the open. He walked onto the grass and noted that, apparently, the representative and Jiang Heng had both vanished. The sun had broken through, and the zombies were gone. In that instant, the group slammed the door shut behind him. From the other side, they screamed that they must not let that maniacal killer back inside, because he was a threat to them all. However, Yabai didn't seem to have a single care. He kept on walking across the open field, while everyone inside questioned if he had gone completely mad. That's when the blonde boy recoiled in shock. A female zombie was standing directly in Yabai's path, and he was calmly walking straight for her. The creature spotted him, but he continued his steady approach. He smirked and tightened his grip on the tool. In the blink of an eye, he charged at her, and everyone stared in awe, wondering why he was attacking the zombie. The poor creature didn't even register what was happening when it took a heavy blow to the skull. Boy, he didn't relent. He smashed it directly to the earth, and that was the end. The group inside was now positive that boy was utterly unhinged. However, our protagonist was surprisingly winded for someone who had just performed such a feat. The boy approached the creature's corpse and extracted a small pearl. He grinned and said he'd found an energy core. This wasn't merely the source of the apocalypse. It was also an incredibly vital resource at this time. He heard a footstep from behind him. He turned to confront an old, shambling zombie. The monster was advancing toward him slowly. Yabai gripped his makeshift weapon once more, sprinted towards it, and the group inside saw him dispatch another. The girl was on the verge of being sick. Meanwhile, the blonde boy demanded to know why he had become so crazed. For what he could possibly recall, that kid had always been a total coward. So how could he have changed so drastically? Everyone started to contemplate just how terrifying he was. They were convinced he was faking being a different person. One of the boys suggested it was wise to let him re-enter, since he was incredibly powerful and could help kill the undead. The others refused to agree with that notion, because he was a complete maniac and might just kill them all. Suddenly, the glass of the window shattered. Yabai asked if his dear classmates were still inside. He told them to come on out and kill zombies, because it was fun. The poor souls inside were all trembling with fear, and in that moment, they warned him something was right behind him. A zombie had appeared and was leaping toward him, but Yabai just glanced at it, extended his leg, and kicked it square in the torso. Once more, he raised the tool and bashed it in the jaw. As he finished off the undead creature, the group watched, paralyzed with fear from behind. Another one collapsed lifelessly to the ground. Our hero wiped his face clean, while everyone else was far too shocked to utter a word. He realized he was being watched, and made a comment that he wasn't sure if this fluid would end up infecting him. He said he desired to journey with his companions, but it was far too dangerous since he didn't want to harm them. With those words, he departed, saying he hoped that they would somehow all survive. His friends watched, wondering if he was truly going to leave like that. And just like that, they were all abandoned within that room. Our hero walked by himself across the deserted campus. He ascended a flight of stairs, while recalling that this was the dawn of the apocalypse. On day one, 50% of the population was infected and governments. The economy and society itself had crumbled. The number of monsters continued to multiply, along with humanity's terror and utter despair. Professor Zanhan dubbed this time the dark era in his former life. He had to rip off his own arm just to live through that day. For 15 years, he survived starvation, hopelessness, and torment until he encountered a man called the Mechanic, who was the one who sent him back into the past. He coolly strode through the empty streets. Some survivors observed him from their hiding spots, wondering if he had no fear of his own demise. Others considered inviting him to take shelter, but they decided if he was traveling by himself, he was likely a threat. Yabai paid them no mind and neared a park. The zombies were there, standing completely motionless, seemingly oblivious to him. But the instant he turned his back, those wretched things began to pursue him. The blond boy yelled that the kid was about to be killed, and the older man remarked, "It was pure madness to go scavenging for food in a world like this." However, Yabai simply flashed a confident smile, readied his tool again, and crushed the first one's skull. One more powerful swing, and another zombie hit the pavement, a brutal impact against the concrete. And the onlookers wondered where his immense courage came from. But another person was watching him as well, from the shadows of a curtain. A girl whispered that eventually she would kill that wretched man. What's this about? Our hero is dispatching zombies. So why are you so furious with him, girl? After eliminating 3 of the creatures, our hero felt drained, but then he heard another sound. A swarm of crows erupted from behind him. 3 additional zombies were now shambling closer. He immediately knew he couldn't defeat all of them. A zombie lunged towards him, and he broke into a sprint. He understood the commotion had drawn a massive horde to this spot. From the safety of another building, a punk observed, noting that kid was running directly their way. That's when Yabai spotted a convenience store beside him. He started hammering on the entrance, demanding to be let in. He faced the camera, saying he required help because he was being swarmed by a horde of the undead. The old man on the screen scoffed that it was preposterous and that nobody would dare open the door for a boy like him. But then, unexpectedly, the metal gate began to rise. At that same instant, a zombie rounded the corner. It flew at him, and Yabai struck its head again. But an elderly woman was shuffling down the street, and he smashed her face with the tool as well. He ducked beneath the gate and tumbled inside. The zombies started hammering on the shutter. But for now, he was finally safe for a moment. And man, what a sanctuary he found. From behind a computer monitor, a small young girl was observing him. Meanwhile, at the nightclub just next door, the punk was watching on and commented that it seemed the kid was killing everything. The guy with the mohawk turned and informed Brother Centipede that a student had just slain about 6 zombies by himself. The most cliched villain in the apocalypse chuckled, as usual, flanked by his women. He mused that it appeared those zombies were weaker than he imagined. If a mere student could do it, it clearly wouldn't pose a challenge for them. Back inside the convenience store, Yabai cracked a smile. He glanced at the counter and told the hidden person to emerge, because he was already aware of her. He also demanded she hand over the key so he could secure the door, but the person on the other side stayed completely still. He exhaled a deep sigh and began to feign pain, claiming that his wound was throbbing and he was near death. Suddenly, the girl appeared from behind the counter. She stood before him and threw him some medical supplies. But man, he's absolutely ruthless. He snatched her by the arm. For heaven's sake, don't let this turn into a romance. She's practically a child. Yabai ordered her to give him the remote control. He promised her that he would not cause her harm. She asked what remote he was referring to, but she was obviously clutching in her hand. He lunged for it and pried it from her fingers. She immediately scrambled away in a state of panic. She hid behind the counter and continued to watch him. Man, he kicked over one of the display shelves, which made the poor girl jump. He called her a fool for trusting him when he claimed to be wounded. Some time passed, and the rain began to fall. Our hero was resting on the bed, completely spent. The very same little girl was dressing his amputated arm. Naturally, Yabai was experiencing excruciating agony. After a few moments, she announced she was finished, and our hero thanked her for saving him. She retrieved the medical supplies and mentioned that it was truly perilous outside. Her father had instructed her to remain right here. He could recover here, and she would bring him sustenance later. With those words, she departed the room. While he thought to himself, she was far too naive. She was the one and only person of all the doors he had pounded on who actually granted him entry. If not for her, he would have been devoured by the zombies lurking outside. But after a moment, he heard her ask what some men were doing. That sound instantly roused Yabai from his thoughts. Several people were now standing before the store, and the man they called Centipede thanked her for unsealing the door for his associates. Terrified, the small girl asked if they only wanted some food, because they were starving. He confirmed that was precisely their goal, and now every morsel of food in this place was his. She warned them her father would be returning shortly, but the men jeered. Her father had already become a lure for the undead, and now that nobody else was around, they could commence their little game. Yabai stood in the corner, listening as they extinguished the girl's life. After plundering the supplies, they tossed her body aside. They called her a moron. But now, back to the present. He knew this time he was required to save her first. He had to ensure that she truly understood the cruelty of this new apocalyptic existence, even if it meant she would forever see him as a monster. She then tapped gently on the door, and it seemed he was ready to embrace his new role, because he instantly roared at her, demanding why she was disturbing his rest. She offered a quiet apology, explaining she had cleaned his clothes since they were so filthy. He grew even more enraged upon witnessing her kindness. He ordered her to discard those clothes and to leave him be. Slightly embarrassed, she replied that it was all right. He thought to himself that with such a fragile nature, it would be a challenge for her to survive in a world like this. However, indulging in a hot shower like this felt incredible, since in the coming future, all water would become tainted. He concluded his bath, knowing that, fortunately, this convenience store held ample food and water. His next objective was to acquire some better gear and weaponry. Staring into the mirror, he noted that being youthful again was truly remarkable. No aching back, no burning sensation in his legs, and being this young was absolutely incredible. The only negative was that even his abs were now gone. He opened the bedroom door to find she had laid out a suit for him. He immediately roared, asking how he could possibly fight zombies while dressed in an outfit like that. The scene cuts back to the nightclub. Centipede ordered everyone to pay close attention. That convenience store surely had food and alcohol, but their supplies wouldn't hold out forever. The strategy was to make a move, kill the zombies out front, and then plunder everything from that store. Not to mention that the degenerate new acute girl was in there, so it would be simple to take care of everything. He even commanded his lackeys to go and eliminate the zombies, so they could initiate their little raid. The monsters kept on hammering at the front of the convenience store. Meanwhile, Yabai approached and got the young girl's attention. He told her to quit being so foolish and said he had a question. He needed to know why she was here all alone and what had befallen her family members. She replied that her father had left to find more supplies, but he had not yet come back. In that moment, he slammed his fist on the table, asking if she was an idiot for letting a stranger inside. What if he had intended to do something terrible to her? How would she possibly protect herself? Terrified, the girl explained that he claimed to be hurt and was covered in blood, so she was afraid he might perish out there. But once more he started to shout, asking if she had failed to realize that he was being hunted by a swarm of monsters. With a nature like that, she was only a liability, so it would be far simpler for him to kill her and save himself trouble. However, since it would be dull to be alone from this point on, she would have to follow his orders. He warned her that she must do exactly as he commanded, or he would eliminate her without a second thought. The thugs from the nightclub were now advancing on the zombies, or perhaps the zombies were now advancing on them. They charged out with immense bravado. But after witnessing the first man get torn apart, they all began to have second thoughts. They started to wonder if these specific creatures were somehow stronger than the ones the student had killed. But Centipede ordered them to keep charging forward, or he would slaughter the entire group himself. However, one of them fled, screaming that death by zombies was much worse. Centipede then grabbed the deserter by the hair, tossed him to the undead, and said his wish was granted. The fool cried out, asking how he could do such a thing, even as he was being ripped to shreds. The remainder of the group was busy killing the creatures. The issue was that Centipede quickly saw there were far too many, and they would all be forced to retreat. The tranquility had been shattered by the horde that pursued them. Meanwhile, the convenience store had returned to a peaceful state. The small girl went upstairs and brought a bowl of ramen to our hero, saying she had prepared it just for him. She also provided the hot water he had requested, but he told her to get out of his sight because she had done plenty. He warned her that unless he explicitly summoned her, she had better not set foot in that room. With that, she shut the door, and he prepared his meal. He began to eat right away because he was famished. The very instant he tasted it, he grew excited and smiled, noting it was truly delicious. However, our hero picked up the bottle of boiling water. He began to approach, and Centipede asked what he was doing. Our protagonist removed the cap and poured it on it. Man, his hand turned crimson and blistered in an instant. Centipede was in absolute agony, but he couldn't release his hand or he'd fall to the zombies. Yabai called him a fool for begging for assistance, while threatening to murder another person. But just then, someone tugged on his shirt sleeve. When he turned around, it was the small girl telling him to desist. She urged him that it would be wiser to let the man inside and to stop causing him pain. This stunned both the protagonist and Yabai. He immediately spun on the girl and ordered her to leave the room because he had not given her permission to enter, saying that her father had taught her never to harm others. He stood there silently for a brief moment. Then he questioned if she had no fear of that man entering the house and killing her. Centipede, on the other hand, swore he would never commit such a heinous act. He was only starving and found himself in this bind because he was swarmed by zombies. The outside was now crawling with the creatures. So unfortunately, he was no longer able to escape. Yabai was furious that the girl had foiled his scheme to kick the man squarely in the head and let the zombies feast upon him. Then he spotted a box cutter lying on the table. Centipede entered, thanking her for her immense kindness, but he warned that now that he was inside, this was now his own domain, and anyone who dared to defy him would have to perish. Now the girl understood she had made a grave error. The sky had grown dark, and zombies were everywhere. A bald man and a boy were now blocking the door. They were the last survivors from the nightclub, and the bald man cursed that it was that bastard's Centipede's doing for getting them all into this mess. The girls were all shrieking in utter panic, and they had no idea what to do because that bastard was surely dead. The most terrible part was that the flimsy wooden door was about to be splintered by the horde. Outside, the bald man saw no way to hold the position. He yelled to the girls, demanding they come help secure the door. But as he glanced back at them, he thought to himself he wished he'd enjoyed their company more, but sadly, that would no longer be possible. The only path to survival was to flee and let them all die. Back inside the convenience store, Centipede stood tall in front of Yui. With a smirk, he told the girl that she was adorable, but far too innocent to believe he wouldn't kill anyone. However, now that he was safely inside, he would offer her a chance to yield and become his personal slave. Then he looked over to the side and said, he had to handle a bastard who poured hot water on his hand first. Out of pure spite, he would ensure the boys suffered immensely. But Yabai stood there quietly, holding the box cutter in his hand. The small girl spoke up again, stating that her family were the owners of the convenience store. She mentioned that downstairs there was chocolate, a plethora of snacks, and enough food for all of them. The two of them stood in silence for a brief moment. The girl offered a smile, saying everyone could share a meal and live together in peace and joy. Centipede's temper finally snapped. He lunged toward her, asking if she was trying to mock him, but the box cutter flashed through the air. In less than a second, Yabai had sliced the man's hand open. Centipede howled in sheer agony, but Yabai flipped the blade around, gripping it in a deadly reverse hold. Centipede managed to block his attack. Our hero had been aiming for his throat, but it was clear that the man was much larger, and he delivered a kick to Yebai's midsection. Our hero was sent flying, and the girl fell to the floor with him. Bleeding, Centipede strode across the room towards him. He warned that this was the first time in his entire life that someone had made him feel this level of rage. Yabai was shocked that, with a single kick, the man had managed to shatter some of his ribs. At that point, Centipede began to stomp on his leg. Our hero was in pure agony. Centipede demanded to know how he had slain a zombie so effortlessly. Yabai stated he would not tell him, and the man snarled back that he was begging for death. He started stomping on him, saying he'd eventually change his tune. The little girl could only watch in horror. Yabai was using this moment as a way to teach her a harsh lesson, but the cost was becoming far too great. He then ordered the man to stop, saying he would confess. Centipede told him to start talking, and quickly. He promised he would inflict the least amount of pain when he killed him. But Yabai spat a mouthful of blood in his face. Of course, this did not please the man at all. He hurled Yabai into the wall and kicked him in the stomach once more. Centipede demanded to know if he found this amusing, and resumed stomping on him without mercy. Manny told Yabai to just die and punched him in the jaw. I think our hero's plan to teach a lesson is going a little too far. But that's when the tables finally turned. The small girl struck him hard across the neck. Centipede spun around, asking what she thought she was doing. He shoved her with great force, sending her to the floor and grabbed the box cutter. He screamed in a furious rage that they were both going to die. But his time was up, and Yebai delivered a blow to the back of his neck with a stick. With that, Centipede collapsed unconscious on the floor. Our hero was completely spent and could hardly stand. The terrified small girl asked if he was now dead. Seeing the expanding pool of crimson fluid, she wondered if she had actually taken a life. Yebai then rested a hand on her shoulder. He told her it was all right because she had only done what was required. Besides, that bastard was a truly wicked man. Confused, she asked why he had behaved in that manner, when all she had done was attempt to help him. But that's when Yebai informed her that the bastard wasn't dead. She looked hopeful and said that if that was true, she should try to save him. But our hero shoved her away. He threw her out of the room and said he had never encountered someone as naive as her. He slammed the door, muttering that this girl made him truly furious. Not to mention that Fiend had now soiled his entire room. He seized Centipede by the leg and dragged his body to the window. Then, with a single powerful kick, he sent him flying to the zombies. Manny hit the ground like a discarded piece of garbage. And for the zombies, it was a banquet, and they all swarmed him. That's when the pathetic man opened his eyes, just in time to see he had become their next meal. Yebai muttered from the window that Centipede was fortunate. He hadn't bothered to sever his limbs first. That's when he detected a different sound. Close by, in the building directly across from him, a man was dangling, attempting to flee. The boy was about to lose his grip, trembling and pleading for them to leave him be. Then, a voice called out to the boy. It was Yebai, asking if anyone else was still alive in that building. The guy said that sadly, he was the only one remaining. They had barricaded the door until one of them let it go. And then the zombies flooded in and devoured everyone. With a voice full of fear, he pleaded with Yebai to rescue him so he could shelter in the store. But our hero informed him that was never going to happen. And if he didn't get out of there immediately, he would share the fate of the man on the ground. The boy glanced down and saw Centipede being consumed. He turned away, repulsed, mustered his courage, and leaped to the adjacent ledge. The kid was a natural at parkour. He managed to find his balance on the railing. He sprinted across it while our hero simply observed. He was rather disappointed that those wretched zombies hadn't killed everyone. From the nightclub, some time passed, but the undead still gathered outside of that place. The window was now shattered, and our hero opened the bedroom door. Outside, the small girl was still there, waiting. He asked her what she was still doing there, and if he hadn't ordered her to go and take a bath. However, she peered into the room and noticed that the body had already been removed. He warned her not to stare too intently, but the man had already been taken to the first floor. The girl asked if he had managed to escape. He responded that with the way he'd thrown the man outside, only a literal god could have survived that. She looked a little downcast and asked why he had to kill the man. Even if he had been a terrible person, they could have had a chance to reform him. But Yebai slammed the door shut above her. He asked if she was so dense that she hadn't learned anything. After everything that had just transpired, no matter her actions, that man was going to try and kill her, because that is the nature of the apocalypse. The girl echoed the word apocalypse, saying he had no idea what he was talking about. But Yebai simply turned and walked away, stating it was foolish to waste his breath on her. So he intended to go take another shower. But she stood up and said she needed to talk with him. She stumbled like a fool and appeared to pass out. Fortunately, Yebai managed to catch her in time. Wondering if the infection had claimed her, he saw no bite marks, so perhaps it was merely a fever. He recalled that some medicine should be in this very room. Now, it explained her fragility since their very first meeting. At last, he located the first aid box, but upon opening it, atop the pills was a pink diary. He began to thumb through its pages, discovering it was a log of blood transfusions, connecting the girl's state with the words written there. He pieced it together. It was some kind of medical journal. He wondered what she had and continued flipping through it. Her name was officially Yahello, and she was only 14 years of age. Beyond that, she suffered from leukemia. He lifted her shirt and began to see why so many bandages covered her body. Maybe because she had been saved by others. She always felt the need to help people in return. But tragically, the kindness she offered was for a world that was already dead. That's when he felt inside his pocket and saw he possessed the apocalypse energy cores. He was unsure of their power against this specific ailment, but night was descending on the city. The streets were still swarming with monsters. Luckily, the darkness brought a brief calm. And after some time, the dawn finally started to break. The undead were all standing perfectly still, but for some unknown reason, the sun drew their gaze. A short while later, Yabai finally awoke. He'd passed out on the table and was now shivering, but he quickly sensed that he was being observed. When he turned his head, he saw Yaoiwearer peeking from the doorway. He found it peculiar that she was already awake, and asked if her condition had improved. She remained silent for just a moment. Before she could form a single word, he ordered her to go and make them some coffee. As she turned to obey, he told her to hold on for a second. He instructed her to pack some supplies and gear, because their new quest was to find her lost father. Yaoiwearer appeared somewhat bewildered, and questioned if they were truly going to do this. Yabai confirmed that yes, they absolutely were, especially since she said her father went to get provisions, so they couldn't just abandon him out there. This frustrating girl could only whine, saying her father told her to be obedient and to wait in the store, not to go searching for him. The protagonist then demanded how long her father was gone. She hung her head and admitted it was at least 3 days. He then asked how long his trips usually took. She answered that it was typically half a day. He then told her to use common sense and consider why he had not yet returned. But she protested, insisting that nothing was wrong because 3 days prior, he called to say he was already heading back. However, our hero was ruthless and asked if she'd gotten any other calls in the last 3 days. He could have been bitten by zombies or fallen into a snare and could be desperately awaiting rescue. Shouldn't they be out there attempting to save the man? But she looked down once more and said, her father ordered her not to depart. Whatever the reason, our hero erupted, calling her a fool. He demanded to know why she wouldn't help her own father, who might be in desperate need of aid. Why was she so quick to help that thug before, but unwilling to venture out and save her father now? He then informed her he wasn't asking for her permission. He could eliminate her right now and leave by himself, but because she had saved him, he would first locate her father as a form of repayment. He commanded her to stop complaining and pack her gear because they were leaving. The poor girl scurried away in a panic, nearly tumbling down the stairs. Yabai was growing weary of these little debates. Outside, the city lay in ruins, and the undead continued their strange vigil, staring at the sky, until suddenly they heard a rumble from behind them. A military jeep came roaring down the street. Man, these foolish zombies thought they could stop it with their hands. Not a chance. It barreled right through them. Bodies went flying everywhere, completely flattened. Meanwhile, back at the convenience store, our protagonist was gathering supplies and getting ready to depart. He glanced behind him, asking why she was hiding, and if she had finished preparing her things. Looking rather dejected, she appeared both adorable and sad. Our hero asked why she had chosen that type of attire, as they were certainly not attending a party. But he immediately shifted his focus, asking where the instant ramen he'd requested was. She gave it to him, and he started to eat, while she gazed around the familiar store. He began to strategize what they would do after opening the door. At the very minimum, he would need to kill a swarm of zombies and find a working vehicle. Then, he would have to ensure she got into the car without doing something incredibly foolish. It would be quite a challenge. He saw she was eating some spicy snacks and asked to try one. The girl felt dejected from being constantly reprimanded. However, someone was now approaching their location, just as she was offering him the treat. They stood there, and in the next moment, everything was sent flying. The place had been thrown into chaos, and Yabai wondered if it had been a tremor. But a truck had smashed its way halfway into the store. The protagonist was shocked, wondering what had just breached the store. The truck sat there, and then its door creaked open. A man in tactical gear emerged and began to laugh. A bald, heavy-set man said he was lucky to find a convenience store. He kicked a nearby zombie and stomped. On it, declaring a good zombie was a dead one. He advanced on the store, saying it was time for a feast. The instant he entered and saw the shelves of snacks, his eyes lit up. He immediately dropped to his knees, licking his lips, exclaiming he had found his favorites. The main city center was completely empty, so he drove to this remote area and seemingly hit the jackpot. But that's when a box cutter appeared at his throat. Yabai warned him to release everything he held and not to twitch. The last intruder who came in had already been dealt with, and he would not be so lenient with another. But in that instant, the heavy man moved and threw snacks at his face. Yabai shut his eyes for just a second, and the man seized his prize and made a run for it. He scrambled back to his truck and slammed the door shut. But man, Yabai materialized at the window and had no intention of letting him flee so easily. He called the man a greedy pig and told him to perish. Just as the box cutter was about to meet its mark, the man pleaded for his life, saying that he would surrender. But of course, that's when Yahello told him to stop his killing spree. She timidly spoke up and saw them both staring at her. She clumsily explained that she didn't want him to be killed because he had caused all this damage to the store. So someone needed to compensate for it. Yabai just watched as the heavy man trembled in fear. He let out a wicked grin and agreed she was correct. He turned his attention to the heavy man and informed him he would have to forfeit the truck as payment for the store's damages. He immediately instructed Yahello to get her bags and load the truck because they were departed. She consented, but then she saw something. The heavy man apologized, claiming he only broke through the door because he was starving and didn't realize they were inside. Then Yahello stepped outside with her gear and was startled. There was a massive horde of zombies approaching due to the crash. The heavy man was scared, wondering why there were so many, especially since he had just eliminated a whole group. Yahello quickly climbed into the vehicle. He secured the door, and the heavy man told them to strap in. He immediately slammed the accelerator because several zombies were now clinging to the truck. He held on tight as the truck plowed over everything, and the heavy man gunned the engine. Man, he was tearing up the entire city, but the bastard seemed to be having a good time. He was even drifting as if he were in some action movie. Yabai ordered him to drive with more care, or he was going to receive a nice slice to the neck. The heavy man tried to clarify that they first had to eliminate the zombies, or they would be completely unable to pass. But that's when our hero asked Yahello what address her father had gone to for supplies. She recalled that in his final call, he was en route to the Fudong supermarket. The heavy man said that location was insane, since it was always crowded and would be infested with zombies. But Yabai told him to quit his whining and just drive, or he would be the next to perish there. They seemed to have outrun the horde. And the heavy man said if things got too quiet, he could put on some relaxing music. At least on the open road, they could have a moment of peace. A zombie on the ground with a stick in its hand raised its arm. As the truck barreled closer, the heavy man showed no pity and ran it right over. As he hummed along to some music and ate some snacks, he mowed down everything in his path. Clearly, this bastard was enjoying the entire experience, and Yabai told him to be silent because he wanted a rest. But the heavy man said not to worry, as the truck was very sturdy, so there was no issue. Yabai, however, raised his box cutter and asked if he was going to disobey. At that moment, all fell silent, and he brought the truck to a halt. Our protagonist told him he never ordered him to stop the vehicle, just to stop making so much noise. That's when the heavy man noticed the gas tank was empty. "Yo, you error," and our hero both screamed out in frustration. He cursed the bastard, who offered an apology, claiming he forgot there was no gas station around here. He began to eat with great urgency, saying that if he were to meet his end, he would at least do so with a full stomach. Yahello, on the other hand, started to hear noises getting closer. A massive zombie appeared right outside her window. The truck had stopped directly in front of Park, and a horde of zombies was beginning to swarm them. The protagonist knew that even if the truck held up, they were all going to die, trapped inside. But that's when a knife behind his seat caught his eye. The zombies were hammering against the glass. Suddenly, someone kicked the truck door, sending it flying from its hinges. Yabai coolly stepped out, and a zombie charged toward him. He drew the machete and sliced through another one. Inside, Yahello was paralyzed with fear, watching the entire scene. Our boy was celebrating, remarking that the blade was quite sharp. Another zombie shambled closer, and he noted that for rookies like these, this type of weapon was more than sufficient. He landed another powerful strike as two more advanced. He glanced off to the side, kicked one in the chest, and eliminated the other. The heavy man inside the truck was stunned, observing everything. Another large zombie collapsed lifelessly to the ground. He could not fathom that this student was so powerful. Even Yahello was completely amazed. Yabai banged the handle of his knife on the truck and ordered the heavy man to get out. The heavy man was utterly terrified, but our hero warned him that if he stayed inside, he would die sooner or later regardless. There were other vehicles nearby, so maybe they would be lucky and find some gasoline in one of them. While he was occupied with the zombies, the heavy man was tasked with gathering some fuel. He reminded him that he had been idle the entire journey, so he had better know his way around a vehicle. Yabai told Yaoyuer to stay inside the truck and not to move, as it was far too dangerous. Yabai then instructed the heavy man to come with him. The heavy man, still not fully composed, said they needed a little more time. But in the next instant, Yabai had already slain the first zombie. The poor heavy man couldn't believe this boy had no fear at all. Yabai moved on, slicing through yet another one. He glanced back and told the man to pick up the pace. But then the heavy man remembered that there were some gas cans in the truck bed. He saw how useful Yabai was and planned to make better use of him. Yabai killed one more zombie. He looked back and asked what the man had just said. Embarrassed, the heavy man claimed he'd been in shock and forgot. But if they just waited a little, he could fill up the tank. Yabai told him to wait and do that later. The heavy man was taken aback. Our hero said he required his help to collect something. He opened his palm, revealing a shimmering green pearl. He explained that they were located inside the zombies' brains. And while he killed them, the heavy man was to harvest them. The poor guy, who had never done such a thing before, started to perspire. But Yabai said it was simple and showed him how. He quickly illustrated the method and asked if the heavy man understood the process. Obviously, the man said it was far too vile, and he'd rather stay in the truck. Yabai warned him that if he returned to the vehicle, he would become ground beef. The heavy man then asked how he was supposed to do it without a blade. Our hero told him to just use his hands, saying he was advancing, and if the man didn't assist, he would be killed as well. With that, Yabai took a step forward and dispatched another zombie. The heavy man, disgusted, approached the first of the fallen zombies. He ran back to the jeep, grabbed a tool, and prayed for his safety. The protagonist said they had no more time to squander and ordered him to start harvesting immediately. But the heavy man, hesitant, wondered if the zombie was actually still alive. He struck it and went to retrieve the pearl. He was amazed that it was much easier than he had imagined. There really was a small crystal inside its head. He never thought the human brain could produce such a thing. He then asked Yabai if they were worth a great deal. But Yabai just told him to be quiet. The heavy man started to wonder if this was why humans had become zombies, and considered if he should keep a few for himself. Meanwhile, Yabai was finishing off another group. After a moment, he declared that was enough, and they would not bother with the ones farther out. He thought to himself that getting accustomed to this untrained body was quite hard. He turned and asked the heavy man how many he had retrieved. The heavy man was proud, saying he had gathered several. He said it was enjoyable, and Yabai told him to clean and store them. Then it was time to fuel the tank so they could finally leave. Yabai then went to check on the condition of Yaoyuer. However, her sickness seemed to have returned again. He was alarmed and quickly grabbed her arm. Calling out her name, he placed a hand on her forehead and saw her fever was even worse than before. He began to search frantically through her bag, remembering that they had packed some medicine and water. The heavy man appeared and asked what was wrong with her, but Yabai told him to be quiet and to fill the gas tank. After some time, she appeared to have stabilized somewhat. The heavy man offered that. Maybe it was because she had remained in the hot truck for too long, and inquired if she was now feeling any better. Yabai, not in the mood for small talk, threatened him once more. He said they had wasted time because the heavy man lied that they had no more gas, and if he concealed anything else, the next person to perish would surely be him. The heavy man immediately offered his apologies, swearing he would never conceal anything from him again. Yaoyuer seemed to stir, and the truck continued its journey. After a while, the heavy man praised our hero's fighting skills and asked what his name was. Our protagonist retorted that it was proper to offer your own name before inquiring about someone else's. The heavy man introduced himself as Zhao Heng and said he was the owner of a workshop in the city. His acquaintance had left this very truck at his shop for service and never returned to retrieve it due to the apocalypse. Then our hero revealed his name was Yabai. But suddenly, Zhao Heng slammed on the brakes, and our hero had to brace himself as they skidded on the road. The protagonist immediately threatened him, demanding why he did that. Zhao Heng pointed out that the entire road ahead was blocked by burning cars. The issue was that Yaoyuer was still trembling. At least she had managed to sit up. When she gazed out of the window, Yabai said it seemed unlikely they could get to the side, where her father was supposed to be. Yaoyuer just watched, silent, with little else to say. The heavy man mentioned there was an alternate path, but it would take them much more time, and he asked if they were still going to attempt it. Yabai answered in the affirmative. But first, they would require new weapons and gear. He asked Zhao Heng if he knew where they could find an electrician, or perhaps a weapon shop. Zhao Heng paused, then said he did. He told them not to worry. He would guide them there. You see, he had a close friend from his hometown who was an incredibly skilled blacksmith. The mention of a blacksmith piqued Yabai's interest. Zhao Hang said there was a high probability the man was still alive, and even if he were not, there would surely be many useful items inside his home. The machete he was carrying had been crafted by this very man. Yabai thought it would be ideal to have plenty of materials to create a truly exceptional weapon. Zhao Hang then began to recount some stories about the times he and his friend had spent together. But Yuer told him to be silent, as our hero had dozed off. They traveled over a bridge into a different section of the city. Zhao Hang exited the truck and said, "Finally, we have reached our destination." Many years had gone by, but this place still looked unchanged. Our hero asked if this place wasn't just a junkyard, and said this detour had better be worth their time, or Zhao Hang would be buried here. But as always, they would need to secure the area before going inside. Yabai asked Zhao Hang if any of those zombies resembled his friend. Zhao Hang looked uncertain, and our hero just told him to start harvesting the pearls. But then someone said, "Oh wait." It was Yao Yuer from the truck, saying she wanted to assist. But Yabai told her she would risk fainting or getting infected, which would only be a hindrance. But she insisted, saying she was better now and would be cautious. Zhao Hang said that since she was so brave, he would do the digging and she could gather the pearls. Yabai warned that if they were to be bitten, he would not hesitate to cut them down. Yao Yuer noticed that Yabai seemed to feel no pain. With that, he began to slice through the undead. Meanwhile, the heavy man was gathering the pearls and talking with Yao Yuer, who was placing them into a bag. But we see that from a nearby structure, someone appeared to be observing them through binoculars. A man smoking a cigarette watched everything, and he looked angry. At that moment, another man entered the room, calling for Brother Lu. Man, Brother Lu seemed to have PTSD, and there's no way. He had already killed another man. He said he would not repeat his warning about knocking. Before entering, another man outside was shaking. Lu asked the newcomer what he had come to report, trembling. The man said they had spotted some people breaking into the blacksmith shop next door. Lu said he had already noticed that a long time ago. So why were they bothering him with this information now? The man clarified that one of the three who had shown up was killing all of the zombies by himself and appeared to be very powerful. Lu just continued to think in silence. He then turned to his female servant, who was obviously there. "Right, guys." She brought him some instant ramen. He threw the packet to the boy, telling him to eat it and give him the rest of the report later. The boy yelled his thanks, saying, "Brother Lu was truly incredible." With that, Lu caressed the poor girl, who was clearly unhappy to be there. She was so starved that she felt weak in the knees. Poor thing. Lu told the rookie to get the heavy man out of there, and to assemble everyone to handle the people downstairs. Whoever eliminated them would receive a prize. Back with Yabai and his group, they had finished killing everything, and only needed to gather one final pearl. He told the heavy man to scout the house while he took a look. Inside, he kicked the door open and discovered a fully stocked blacksmith shop. As he cautiously walked through it, he inspected every item. He noticed the anvil, and the most curious thing was that the forge was still burnt. So someone must have been here very recently. The heavy man then noted that the house appeared to be secure, but he had no idea where the blacksmith had gone. Our hero told him to bring the pearls and supplies from the vehicles. He also instructed him to sharpen his own blade. The heavy man wanted to know why he didn't just grab the many weapons that were hanging on the wall, as they were already completed. But Yabai explained that within a week, those kinds of weapons would become completely obsolete. Zhao Hang quickly realized that the young man was intending to forge a new weapon. Yabai told him to hurry up and bring the damn pearls. Zhao Hang mumbled that his companion was far too impulsive. Yuer then asked what her task would be. With the forge blazing and the bellows working, the primary skill of the mechanic was, of course, creation. He placed a steel pipe into the flames and began to hammer. Zhao Hang just stood back, watching the whole process. He was amazed that someone so young knew the art of blacksmithing. Our hero instructed Zhao Hang to pour all the pearls into the crucible. The heavy man complied, and Yabai placed them into the fire, where they started to liquefy. After a short while, everything had become a green fluid. Seeing the glowing aura rise, Zhao Hang realized it looked like some form of magic. Yabai then took a box cutter and opened a bottle of strawberry soda, pouring it into the molten pearls, which began to swirl together. He then took the mixture and poured it over the blade, which started to fuse. Zhao Hang stood there, watching it all unfold. Our hero returned to his hammering. As he worked inside, the sounds echoed outside, and naturally, this drew the attention of Brother Lu's group. The man from before was now terrified, but the man with the chiseled jawline was excited to acquire a large amount of supplies by killing these newcomers. Another man with long hair remarked, "The greatest prize would be spending time with someone named Iguan." However, the man in the polo shirt said, there had to be a reason Brother Lu wanted them to kill this man. The wisest strategy was to wait for nightfall, when their defenses would be at their lowest, and then they could initiate their assault. Back in the house, Yabai was absorbed in his craft. Man, the kid was truly creating some futuristic mechanical parts. Zhao Hang was beginning to suspect. Our hero might be some sort of genius engineer from the top university in the entire country. Yabai would complete a component and go back to forge another. From the water, he pulled out the first finished piece. The heavy man looked at it and commented that the electrical pattern looked really impressive. Yabai just smirked and said that all the components were complete. Now it was time to unleash the true power of a mechanic. Meanwhile, Yuera set the noodles on the table and began to prepare her meal, happy to be with Yabai, because at least she felt secure. Suddenly, a hand clamped over her mouth. It was the depraved, long-haired man who said he was taking her to a new place, but Yabai seemed to hear a sound just before that. Inside the shop, he had been sharpening his new blade. He fitted it into a mechanical housing and set it on the table. Zhao Hang, intrigued, said he'd only seen such a device in movies. Yabai grabbed 2 wires and said it was time for activation. He charged the weapon, and it began to emit a green light. The generator in the shop was already starting to fail, and the heavy man was truly impressed. Our hero announced that the second order blade was now complete. Zhao Hang wanted one for himself, but then they heard Yao Yuer's voice cry out from outside. The next instant, they were running to see what had happened. They came face to face with the entirety of Brother Lu's gang. Yabai saw Yao Yuer lying unconscious in the man's grasp, and his expression immediately turned cold. The bald man at the front ordered him to drop his weapon, or the girl would die. But Yabai just raised his arm, slashed the ground, and a shock wave cleaved the man in 2. In a panic, another one attempted to flee, but Yabai simply asked where he thought he was going. He slashed again, cutting through metal as if it were paper. At that point, everyone was in a mad dash, trying to escape. Meanwhile, behind them, Yabai had already created the first headless knight. The man who had spoken with Lu earlier told the other to release the girl, or they would never escape this place alive. But the man insisted on running, saying that if they failed to escape, Brother Lu would surely kill them later. That's when a lightning-fast slash passed before them, and from behind, Yabai was slowly making his approach. But then Zhao Hang shouted, warning him that a horde of zombies was approaching from behind. The strange thing was they were moving much faster than usual, as if they had been injected with some kind of stimulant. Zhao Hang didn't know what to do and turned to Yabai. He tightened his grip on the handle of his blade, slashed at the zombies, and started to cut them down beside him. Zhao Hang could only watch in absolute awe as Yabai unleashed a storm of deadly attacks. The problem was that, obviously, the 2 bastards were escaping. Zhao Hang then pointed out they were fleeing toward that building. Yabai said, "Of course," and told the heavy man to stop standing there and to pursue them with the vehicle. The heavy man scrambled into the truck, saying he understood. As he drove away, he saw that Yabai was still engaged with a large number of zombies. The mission to rescue the damsel in distress now fell to him. The guys heard a sound from behind them. Of course, it was Zhao Hang's truck, and they leaped into a bus. Zhao Hang hit the brakes and saw they had arrived at what appeared to be the guy's base. He exited the truck, unsure of what to do, since the entrance was blocked by the bus, while the 2 from before disappeared inside with Yuer. Other men inside the building observed him through the windows, seeing that he was just a single heavy man. They believed it would be easy to handle him. They disembarked from the bus and told him to leave the vehicle there, or everyone inside that building would end up incinerated. Zhao Hang said he wasn't afraid and told them to bring it on. The guy in the cap charged at him, claiming he had killed more people than Zhao Hang had eaten. Chicken Man, considering Zhao Hang's stature. That was quite an arrogant statement. But Zhao Hang just readied himself and said they were asking for death. That's when a green crescent slash flew through, and of course, the man was split in 2. Man, the bus behind him was also shattered. Zhao Hang was astonished that our hero had already killed all the zombies, but Yabai just paid him no mind and told him to follow. They were going to rescue Yao Yuer. He prepared another attack and sliced the bus completely in half. From behind the pillars, a group of men was preparing to charge at the 2 of them. Yabai, with nerves of steel, was walking out in the open. Seeing that Yabai was a fool, one of the men threw a knife at him, But the boy, a true apocalyptic master, sensed the blade and effortlessly parried it. He slashed back, and another one fell. From behind some crates, a man threw a Molotov cocktail. But Yabai evaded it with a swift, dance-like step and sent another green crescent slash their way. Then someone fired a gun. Luckily for Yabai, he was like Neo from the Matrix and narrowly avoided the bullet. Brother Lu, watching, noted that Yabai seemed exceptional. He said he was curious to know how Yabai was so powerful and asked if he would like to have a drink with him. He tried to explain that he admired talented people like Yabai, but Yabai just raised his glowing blade. Lu pointed to Yao Yuer and told Yabai not to move. She was sleeping soundly, but in an instant, she could be dead. Lu said Yabai was being treated with respect, so he had better stop acting in this manner, or else he would find out if a bullet was faster than a sword. Yabai just stood there, observing the situation. Zhao Heng asked what they were going to do in a predicament like this. Suddenly, Yabai smiled and said he would agree. He was working on a large-scale project and needed a big group, so if Lu would assemble everyone to talk, Yabai would grant them an opportunity. Lu questioned if Yabai truly wanted to speak with everyone, and said that if that were the case, they would welcome him. Zhao Heng whispered to Yabai that it was madness to face everyone by himself, since they were all armed. But Yabai just told him if he didn't want to go, he should just get lost. The heavy man was trembling, but said that if Yabai was going alone, he would rather go as well. He was truly leaving and had no regrets. Then, the underlings arrived, leading him to another chamber. A moment later, he was brought into a room, standing before Brother Lu's entire crew. Lu offered a welcome and said, "Every healthy survivor within a 15-kilometer radius has gathered here, and I am their commander, a man called Lu Shang." He then asked for the protagonist's name and what assistance he required. Our hero stated his name was simply Yabai. He claimed he already knew of Luo Xiang, and asked if he was aware of how this cataclysm began. Luo's expression turned to confusion, wondering how Yabai knew him and the origins of all this. Yabai praised Lu for foreseeing the impending disaster and amassing such a large cache of supplies. He also surmised that Lu's ultimate goal was likely to create the fearsome Nether Dragon Association. Lu Shang was now even more bewildered. He said he had only spoken that name to his inner circle, so how could Yabai possibly know these things? But our hero revealed the shimmering energy core, stating he knew Lu was far more interested in that. Lu Shang, growing tired of the games, commanded Yabai to reveal all of his secrets. Yabai paused for a brief, tense second and said that the zombie plague might have originated from a virus carried by birds from a foreign land. Others said it was a biological weapon crafted to thin the world's population. The wildest rumor was that an alien meteor had impacted the planet, unleashing an unknown pathogen. Yabai stated his belief that Lu Shang had heard these three theories, which is why he had relocated the city's key figures to this well-defended location. Lu Shang confirmed this. He knew a small secret regarding the virus. He produced 2 pearls from his coat and admitted he didn't know why they formed within the skulls of the undead creatures. But he suspected Yabai's great project, and the weapon he now carried had some connection to it. Yabai affirmed this, but said he required aid with certain tasks. Lu Shang agreed, but demanded to see the weapon first. Our hero began to present it, but Lu Shang gestured to the girl held captive beside him. Nobody here wanted a tragic outcome. Yabai fell silent, reluctantly surrendering the sword. But as soon as Lu's underling touched it, he nearly buckled under the immense weight. He took it to Brother Lu, saying it was impossible to wield something so massive. Lu was skeptical and tried to lift it himself, but when he found he couldn't even budge it, he conceded the day was filled with astonishment. He then told Yabai to begin his demonstration and reveal what he wanted. Our hero explained that in this new world, as soon as the infection begins to take hold, a pearl starts to coalesce in their brain. At first, it is a darkened pearl, but the longer it remains inside the zombie's skull, the more power it begins to gather. The energy within these cores can assimilate into the human body and can also be harnessed to forge mighty weapons. Lu was fascinated by the idea of the pearls adapting to the body. He asked if one could consume them to become ever stronger. Yabai confirmed it was possible, but the vast majority just became mindless zombies. Lu needed to know what became of those who didn't transform. Yabai simply told them all to watch. He would show them. The first step was activation. He touched the 2 power leads together, unleashing a flash of green energy. It surged through the room, and the generators burst into flames. With that, the entire facility went dark. Lu instantly demanded to know what was happening. But in that same instant, Yabai seized the mighty blade. He lunged toward Lu and swung down with all his might. But the weapon failed to hit its mark. He fired back with a quick gunshot. But Yabai dodged it. Yabai tightened his grip on the weapon and made a perfect, clean slice through the man. The trembling man admitted that he had let his guard down. Our hero simply declared that the wretched Nether Dragon gang would fall on this day. In the future, they would become infamous for the weapons they would forge and the system of slavery they would later create. But before any of that could come to pass, he was going to eradicate every last one of them. Another powerful slash, and more bodies were torn to pieces. The entire floor was now a ruin. Yabai felt a wave of relief that Yao Yuer was still unconscious. He gently stroked her hair, thinking that while the world was cruel, he did not want her to see such horrific scenes. But suddenly, a figure appeared in the doorway. Yabai turned and saw, of course, the coward Zhao Hang who had previously fled. He entered with a bright flashlight. Amazed that Yabai had annihilated the entire group, Yabai simply confirmed that he had. He picked up a firearm from the floor and said he had successfully achieved his goal. Zhao Heng asked if they came all this way just for a weapon and not to rescue Yuer. Yabai explained that in this changed world, weapons had evolved and were now incredibly dangerous. Now, Zhao Heng was intrigued about what Yabai intended to create. He praised Yabai's brilliant plan to have him throw some pearls into the generator, saying it was an incredibly clever move. But then they heard the sound of glass shattering on the ground. They looked over and saw a young girl collapsing to the floor. In a panic, she begged them not to harm her. Zhao Hang, ever the fool, asked why there was a beautiful maiden in distress here. The girl explained she had been taken captive by Luo Xiang and had been forced to live here as a slave, enduring torment daily with no ties to his gang. Yabai then inquired if she knew where Luo Xiang kept the rest of his supplies. She said she did and offered to lead them there. On the way, Zhao Hang asked about her origins. She replied that she came from the eastern part of the city. In the middle of their talk, they came to a stop before an elevator. She said the main storage was, unfortunately, on the 6th floor. Yabai told Zhao Hang to stay hidden with Yuer, while he and the girl went to investigate the storeroom. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of the battle, the man from before was crying out for assistance. He was horrified when he saw Brother Luo's body bisected. He slowly tried to get up and saw a pearl right before him. He remembered Yabai calling it the black metal energy, and Lu Shang saying that consuming it could make one a god. Desperate, and with no other choice, he consumed it in a single gulp. His pupils constricted, and veins bulged across his skin as he began to twist in agony. Lightning flashed outside as Yu Yue awoke inside the room. She asked Zhao Hang about their current location, and he told her to remain calm. He explained that she had been abducted earlier, but that he and Yabai had already rescued her. At that moment, Yabai re-entered the room, seeing that she was now conscious. Zhao Hang asked if they had found anything of value, and Yabai confirmed that they had. But it would require until the next day to move it all. Zhao Hang then asked what happened to the girl. Yabai explained that when he entered the storage area, she started to flee. He found her sudden escape strange, especially since it was pouring rain outside. Yabai just told him to forget about the girl, because he needed to get some much-needed rest, as the streets would be swarming with zombies. Now the scene cuts to a girl taking a shower. She was calmly washing when a man's voice appeared, saying that since she had transformed and was in his home, she had to understand that nothing in this world was free. He began trying to force open the door, telling her that besides her physical form, she had absolutely nothing to offer. She began to cry out for help, but the man scoffed that with the storm outside, no one would ever hear her. But then the door creaked open. The man was shocked and went to see what had happened. But boy, he had made a grave mistake. The girl heard a scream, and upon looking, saw the man had been killed by a colossal creature. The fool was slammed hard against the wall, and the blonde girl shrieked in absolute terror. The creature stood motionless, staring right at her. It began to slowly extend its hand, and in her panic, she begged it not to come any nearer. The monster stopped for a brief moment. It saw its reflection in a mirror and fell to the ground, crying out that it was not a monster. It began to question why it had transformed into this. The creature slammed the floor, saying it refused to remain like this. The blonde, confused, asked what he was. He explained that he had been shot, but had ingested a zombie Pearl, and his body had begun a terrifying mutation. The blonde was baffled by this talk of humans changing. By consuming the black metal from the pearls, The man said that someone by the name of Yebai had explained, saying he had retrieved the pearl from a creature's head. The blonde seemed to recognize the name and ran to him, demanding if he had truly mentioned the name Yebai. The crazy girl suddenly found her courage, demanding to be told where Yebai was. The monster said that Yebai had shown up in the 7th city recently and had slain everyone inside of a building. It seems this blonde was the same one from the very beginning, and she declared her desire to kill Yebai. But the monster told her it was impossible to defeat him because he was incredibly powerful. The blonde said she was in this condition because of that bastard. The two were now enemies. She stood there a moment, thinking, and asked if he wasn't strong since he had killed that man. In an instant, the monster explained he felt powerful, but was unable to control his strength. Well then, he asked if she felt no fear of him, if this was truly the same girl from before. It was Ruashi, who laughed like a complete maniac. She gently touched his muscular arm. She told him he was very powerful, and that if he helped her kill Yebai, she would allow him to do as he pleased. Man, this girl was insane. Did she not see he was a giant monster? But the even crazier one got excited, lifting her into the air and saying that in that case, he would assist her in killing Yebai. She smiled, saying their plan was now set. However, he did not seem to be doing well, and she asked him what was the matter. He felt his knees and began to scream. The night passed, and a new day arrived. Our hero got ready inside the warehouse. They had located more instant ramen, cigarettes, and various drinks. Yebai slung his demonic sword onto his back and said that, now that they had packed everything up, it was time for them to leave. They descended the stairs, talking about their supplies. But the heavy man suddenly became terrified. It looked as if a meteor had crashed on his truck. He started to weep, panicking, saying they couldn't even open the door. Yebai was lost in thought, realizing the damage was too severe for a simple rainstorm. He told Zhao Hang to move out of the way. Then he sliced the crumpled section. With that, the truck became a makeshift convertible. Man, it looked like it came directly from the factory, with the mirrors aligned perfectly. They got into the vehicle, and Zhao Hang cheered that at least the engines still functioned. He then asked if they were now heading to find Yue's father. Yebai simply confirmed it, and they drove off. The heavy man was excited, saying that driving a convertible felt incredible. But then they caught the attention of some nearby zombies. Looking to the side, they saw a girl and a group of students fleeing from a horde. Those were Yebai's former classmates from school, and he was shocked that they were somehow still alive. The group was running, desperately crying out for help. The zombies were gaining on them, and of course, one of the clumsy girls tripped and fell. The creatures were about to descend upon her, when a green crescent slash cut through everything. The students were absolutely shocked. They were even more stunned when they saw Yebai approaching. He smiled, saying he had found his classmates once again. They began to thank him, saying they thought they were goners. The blonde guy commented on how powerful Yebai had become, and asked where he had obtained such immense strength. Yebai ignored his question and asked where they were headed now. The blonde explained that after they escaped the school, they heard about a new camp being set up on an island. But many had been devoured by zombies during their journey. One of them saw the truck and immediately begged for a ride. Another one approached, saying she was famished and asking if he had food to share. Yue just watched, seeing how disheveled the students were. Zhao Hang commented that they were likely after his truck. At that moment, Yebai commanded everyone to be quiet. He warned them that the truck had very little fuel remaining, so there was no chance they could take them far. And besides, they would have to do him a favor before he would help them. The ex-classmates, excited, said they would do whatever he asked. Yebai smiled. He called over Zhao Hang and told him to explain the rules. This time, Zhao Hang, thrilled, was now the one in charge of the others. Our hero advanced toward the zombies, saying he would clear them all out, and they were to handle the cleanup. The students were all confused, but Zhao Hang began to explain the process. He handed out the tools and began to harvest the pearls. He smiled at everyone, saying that it was simple, but one of the girls immediately fainted. Yao Yue, completely unfazed, reassured them all that the heads were very soft, so it was easy to extract the pearls. The group was horrified, wondering what this young girl had endured to be so calm. Zhao Hang then passed out the tools to everyone, warning them not to get infected. But the blonde guy was now curious, wondering why the green dancer wanted all those pearls. Yebai continued to kill while they harvested. 2 hours later, they had filled up the entire bag. Yebai then told them to distribute some of the food, but Zhao Hang became enraged, furious that Yebai was giving away food without consulting him first. The students were all pleading, But man, the heavy guy wasn't willing to give up a single scrap. Right at that moment, a creature landed on the truck's metal frame. The transformed monster from before had now fully mutated. Yabai realized this was an ability user who had now evolved. He immediately spun around and yelled for everyone to run. But man, he was nearly sliced in the arm. He dodged backward and unleashed another green crescent. But the monster was an intelligent human as well and managed to evade. Then, from out of nowhere, someone began to applaud. That damn low-cut queen had finally located our hero. Yabai was livid when he laid eyes on Ruashi. The students were all bewildered, wondering why their class president was suddenly here. Ruashi said she had clawed her way back to survival, just so she could one day witness Yabai's demise. She immediately commanded the creature to eliminate him. Yabai could not comprehend why. The creature would align itself with the low-cut queen. The monster charged at him, leaving no option but to fight. Yoyer cried out his name, and suddenly a fireball erupted between them. On the rooftop was another new creature, a flaming, long-haired female zombie. And suddenly, the scene cuts to a large ship in the open sea. A man was leisurely smoking a cigar, saying it was tranquil here because zombies could not fly. They were intending to live there in complete peace, slowly scavenging supplies from other passing boats. Or perhaps not, because one of the boats just detonated. The fools were terrified, and here came the flame-haired zombie. The two screamed, but it was far too late. They were already gone. Back to the present. The creature was now standing atop the building before them. Both our hero and the transformed monster were staring at. Yabai knew it was another mutated ability user, and even worse, an elemental one. Ruashi had no clue elemental creatures existed, and she asked her monster if that thing was a friend of his. He replied that he did not know. But right then, the flame monster leaped from the roof towards him. The creature seized him by the neck, and everyone could now see that it was not an ally. Ruashi's monster tried to fend off the flame creature, asking who she was and why she was attacking him. She planted her boot on his stomach and kicked him away, sending him flying into a nearby car. Then she turned and unleashed a torrent of fire at him. Poor Zhao Hang was crying, devastated that their truck and food were gone. But Yabai told him to stop worrying about that and start running. Our hero took off running, but Ruashi still craved her vengeance. She ordered her monster to go and kill Yabai, who was now trying to flee. The monster tried to explain that the situation wasn't looking too good for him, and then, completely out of nowhere, the flame creature launched a fireball directly at Yuer. The ground erupted, and everyone was sent flying. Yuer fell hard to the ground. But of course, Yabai had managed to save her once more. Now, with a barrier of flames between them, Yabai told everyone to stop staring and run for their lives. Zhao Heng asked where they were supposed to escape to. Yabai looked around and saw a garage entrance across the street. He started sprinting, yelling for everyone to follow him. Meanwhile, Ruashi's monster was face to face with the flame creature. He attempted to negotiate with her, saying that they should not be fighting, and asked if she had also ingested the black metal energy to end up in her current form. The flame creature whispered the words Black Pearl, but then she was suddenly struck by a headache. She fell to the ground, saying she never wanted to eat it. She explained that she had been restrained to a bed and forced to consume it by a group of lunatics. She wanted to kill them all, and whoever she killed would become ashes. Ruashi's monster said he had been forced to eat it as well, and he could understand her pain. But Ruashi had no time for this little chat, and told them to get a move on, because Yabai was getting away. She crossed her arms and sarcastically asked how they would ever get their revenge if they let him escape. The monster reassured her, saying he could still track Yabai's unique scent. The flame creature asked who this person was that they were so obsessed with finding. The black monster explained that Yabai was someone with knowledge of the pearls. Maybe he even knew how to return them to their human forms. The flame creature, thoughtfully, said that if there was a way to become human once more, she would join their hunt. Meanwhile, our hero was running with his companions. But suddenly, a car came flying and exploded right before them. Following the scent, the creature had easily located them, saying their little battle was not yet over. He knew that Yabai held the secrets of the accursed pearl, so he had better start revealing them and not attempt any tricks. Yabai knew he could not escape a fight with this monster. He told Zhao Heng to flee with Yuer, while he stayed back to buy them some precious time. But they soon ran straight into the flame creature. Zhao Heng said that, unfortunately, they were now completely surrounded. Ruashi just laughed, sitting on the car, saying there was no chance of escape now. Yabai was growing weary of this insufferable woman. He told his friends to find cover and not to approach, while he handled the monstrous creatures. The black monster came charging straight at him. Yabai braced himself and leaped backward. Then he drew his sidearm and discharged a round. Roashi, the fool, took a bullet to the shoulder. She cried out in agony. The black monster was stunned. He thought Yabai was going to shoot at him. And if you believe our hero was finished, you're mistaken. He fired another shot right in her gut before the monster could jump in and protect her. Yabai followed up with a green crescent slash, and the monster had to throw himself in the path to shield her. Just then, the flame creature launched an attack from behind. She set the area ablaze, but Yabai dodged to the side. Man, she sent a wave of fire his way, but he was able to deflect it with his sword. Meanwhile, Yahello and Zhao Hang were watching the chaos. Yahello pulled a hatchet from her bag and threw it at the flame creature, but just bounced off her head without causing any harm. The creature spun around, and Zhao Hang asked what she had just done. But with that small distraction, Yabai almost landed a fatal blow on the creature's head. However, his true objective was the pipe located above, which ruptured and sent water pouring down on the flame creature, dousing her flames. With that, Yabai seized the chance and slashed at her. She screamed in pain for a brief moment, but Yabai pulled back his blade and nearly hit her foot. The creature attempted to flee, and Yabai was now face to face with the black monster again. The monster warned Yabai he would pay for this in the future. Worn out, the two creatures retreated from the scene. Yabai made them all run away with their tails tucked. But exhausted, he fell to his knees. Yabai asked if he was injured, but he said no, he was just glad that they had all survived. Two ability users in a situation such as that. The heavy man asked if he knew the origin of these creatures. Yabai remained silent for a second before explaining what occurs when some humans ingest those pearls. Most of them become zombies, but there's a small probability some will become a type of creature known as ability users. The problem is that this only occurs once in 10,000 cases, and it's even more rare for them to keep their consciousness. Zhao Hang wanted to know how Yabai was already aware of all this. The protagonist replied he would explain more of it at a later time, but their main goal was to decide where they were going next. Zhao Hang then remembered they were without a truck or any food. Yabai found it strange because the apocalypse seemed to be advancing much more quickly than it did in the past, and before things could become even more dangerous, he needed to forge even stronger weapons. Outside, the rain began to fall again, and the worst thing was that the truck was truly demolished. Zhao Hang wept, saying that at least they could salvage a few of their resources, and the worst of it all was that those damn monsters had piled all the cars before the garage to prevent them from escaping. So now they had nothing. He gave a coat to the two of them, saying that, unfortunately, it was the only item he had to shield them from the downpour. Our hero then asked Yahello what was troubling her. She said that she had actually visited this location before because an old acquaintance of her father lived nearby. She gestured towards a large mountain, saying that if they were to follow that road, they would eventually reach his house. The big guy asked who this person was and if he was still alive. She said he was a little eccentric, but that he was a good person, or at least she hoped he was. His house had incredibly high walls and many computers and food, so it was most likely a safe place. The big guy asked if that man had a cyber cafe in his house, and our hero said that since he was a friend of her father's, perhaps her dad was there as well. So it might be a good idea for them to go and investigate. However, a horde of zombies was approaching from behind them again. Yabai said he would clear a path, and they should follow close behind. Meanwhile, the other large monster was also killing a group of zombies. He went to one of them and tore out a pearl. He said it seemed to be enough and leaped up onto the building. The fire monster girl was taking shelter from the rain. He came in from outside and called out for Ruashi. She was on the verge of passing out. He said he had brought some pearls, and she told him to hand all of them over quickly. The monster asked if she was certain she wanted to eat that. She told him to just hand it over and get the hell out of her room. Man, the big monster got berated like a fool. He respected the girl. The fire girl asked if she had eaten it, and he said that she appeared to be hesitating. Her friend said she would surely hesitate as well, especially after seeing the state she was in after eating one. But the big monster said he simply didn't want her to die. The fire girl seemed to have cauterized her own wounds, but she knew that without proper medical attention, there was no way she was going to survive. And the other one understood that perhaps her only chance for survival was by eating it. The fire girl said that would be a good thing, since she could mutate just like them. And then they would have one more person to help them. They would kill whoever they pleased and get revenge on everyone. But the big monster said, there might be powerful people like Yabai in this world. Besides, her arm wasn't regenerated. The monster girl said that it was strange, The man's weapons seemed to be able to block even her flames. And the big, dark-skinned monster said, "The best course of action would be to kidnap that man and force him to reveal all the secrets of the pearls." At that moment, she introduced herself as Jubo, and the big, dark-skinned monster introduced himself as Wong Peng. Back with our friends, another creature was being dispatched. Even in the pouring rain, he did not stop for a moment. However, our hero seemed to be growing tired. Zhao Heng quickly noticed this and said they needed to find a place to take shelter. He told him not to worry and asked Euro where they were. She pointed to a bridge and said that after they crossed it, they would ascend the mountain. The issue was that the tunnel was completely flooded, and it appeared to be very deep. Our hero saw that everything seemed to be blocked off. However, he quickly spotted a piece of wood and told Euro to get on it, and they would push her across. The three of them then began to move through the tunnel. However, Zhao Heng was absolutely terrified, asking if it were possible for zombies to be underwater. Yabai didn't respond, and Yuer called out to him. The poor guy was just trying to stay conscious. But suddenly he passed out, taking her small raft along with him. The poor guy plunged directly into the murky water, back with the other monsters. They were realizing that the rain showed no signs of stopping. Wong Peng decided to go back to the room and speak with Ruashi. However, that's when he saw her emitting a strange, purple energy. He asked what had happened, and she began to scream, hitting him in the chest. Jubo came in and asked why they were yelling. Man, a black aura erupted throughout the entire building. And now we're in the past life of our dear Yabai. He was pulled from the water, and Ruashi demanded to know where his mechanic group was hidden. She was enraged that he wouldn't talk and told her to go to hell. She then called him arrogant and said he would pay the price. With that, he was shoved back down into the water. Sometime later, he awoke back in the present in a small room. The wearer was asleep on his leg and woke up still a bit groggy. She was thrilled that he had finally regained consciousness. However, he wanted to know where he was. At that moment, the big guy entered, taunting him, saying he had finally come back to his senses. Yabai seemed annoyed that the big guy was still with them. He said that, of course, it was he who had carried him to this place. Our boy asked how they got him up the slope in such a heavy rain. At that point, a gray-haired man entered the room and said he wanted to know that as well. How could a young man, a big man, and a small child survive in streets filled with zombies? Then, Yuer got excited and called him Grandpa Jiang. He explained that Zhao Heng had pulled our hero from the water, but didn't know what to do next. Luckily, he had been observing everything on a camera and drove up with a vehicle to rescue them all. Yabai asked if he had witnessed everything, and the old man said he saw him slicing through the zombies as if they were cucumbers. That weapon of his was truly remarkable, and he wanted to know where he had acquired it. Our hero stood up and said he could not reveal where, and demanded it be given back to him immediately. The poor guy threatened the old man, but collapsed to his knees from complete exhaustion. The old man then said that it seemed wielding that sword truly exhausted anyone's stamina. He apologized for failing to introduce himself. He said his name was Jiang, and he could be called Professor Jiang. This was his laboratory, where he performed research on the zombie virus. Yabai seemed to recognize that very name. Then he remembered that the first scientist to name the black energy, metal pearls, was this very man. To a futuristic mechanic like him, this man was a living legend. Our hero hesitantly asked if he was truly Professor Jiang. Embarrassed, the old man said that the title Professor was just something he enjoyed using because it sounded impressive. But in truth, he was just a guy who liked to tinker. However, he was fascinated by that weapon, which could save humanity, and wanted to have a closer look at it. Jiang, perhaps this could be worthwhile. But he folded his arms and declared he offered something far better for the man's research. It was a living specimen of the undead downstairs. The old man displayed everything on the workbench. His weapon was there. The professor said he merely analyzed and nothing further. With that, our hero rose to his feet, startling the old man. He claimed he nearly shattered his spine just to lift it. Our hero scanned the area, noting this place was magnificent. With a high-tech workshop like that, he could forge even deadlier armaments. The old man asked if he had crafted that weapon. Our hero confirmed it. In that very instant, the professor became ecstatic, wanting to see him craft another. However, our hero said the creation process was a trade secret. The old man grumbled, saying that was simply unfair. Our hero just said if he provided good meals for a few days, he might just reconsider. And on the old man's display, he had already seen intel on the two of them long ago. Man, there is never a single day of peace in this broken world. I almost feel pity for these poor zombies who are cursed with perpetually wet feet. from within the stronghold. Yuera was monitoring the cameras when Jiang entered with coffee. He said he was happy she was present. She replied she was trying her best to be of assistance, and Jiang praised her for scouting for other survivors. However, he added that unfortunately, there was still no information on her father. She said that her father and Professor Jiang were good men, so she knew in her heart he was safe. The old man then walked over and asked if the two who arrived with her were truly decent people. That student seemed anything but normal, knowing so much about advanced technology at such a young age. Not only that, he had a look in his eyes he had only seen in killers, and the big man appeared harmless. But he was sure he was concealing many secrets. At that instant, the big guy showed up and told the professor to stop speaking ill of him to others. In his opinion, the old man was the strange one for living in such a vast place, with a helicopter pad on the roof, a fleet of cars, gasoline for years, and countless solar panels, not to mention the literal mountains of food. The old man shouted, saying the big guy knew absolutely nothing. He had sensed for a long time that the apocalypse was near, which is why he had made all these preparations. He was here, in his home, eating and living without contributing, and still had the audacity to speak badly of him. The old man also claimed that his sole purpose here was to be the savior of all humanity. The two of them began to argue, and Yuera told them to stop it. However, at that instant, the big guy felt a prick on his neck. Our hero simply told him to hold still. He drew a tiny sample of blood, and Zhao Heng demanded to know what that was for. He just turned and stated that the zombies' next mutation was about to begin very soon. They were running out of time. An even greater catastrophe was on the horizon, so it was crucial for them to prepare. The old man was shocked by the talk of zombie evolution. Meanwhile, outside, those former classmates were watching the zombies. Man, I had completely forgotten those people existed. He knelt down and told them all that this area was surrounded, so there was no way for them to get out. One of them noted the rain was severe and the path was flooded. They were at a complete loss, and his friend Xiaozi had collapsed to the ground. The blonde guy said he sadly had no idea where Yebai went. There was no food in this building, so they would all perish here. However, the blonde claimed there was still one option. He produced some pearls and displayed them to the group. The others recalled this was what they had harvested from the heads. The blonde said that out of pure curiosity, he had secretly kept some of them, and he remembered the creatures who attacked them had claimed that they had ingested these. One of their friends asked if he was actually considering eating that thing. And then one of them interrupted, asking what that was. Pointing off to the side, from the top of another structure, a strange purple smoke was ascending. The blonde wondered why there was a strange tornado over there. Meanwhile, back at John's laboratory, our post-apocalyptic mechanic was deep in the creation process. Zhao Heng noted that he had been at it for several days, and had no idea why he was so hyper-focused. Zhang quickly said that he was likely forging equipment to combat the undead, and maybe many more of them would appear, like that black spine monster, and the other one made of pure fire. Zhao Heng said that if that occurred, everyone here would be killed. After all, they didn't seem to have any weapons in this facility. The old man explained he only wanted to build a sanctuary, not a battleground. Why would he ever need weapons? But suddenly, Yuera came running and called out to them. She said she spotted her father on one of the cameras. The three of them immediately rushed over to her, and he asked where she had managed to see him. She sat at the console and said she saw him at the eastern entrance. She even recorded the footage and told him to have a look. On one of the monitors, you could see her father covered in the guts of zombies, blending in with the horde. The old man said that from his gait, it didn't appear that he had turned into a zombie. Meanwhile, her father took advantage of the chaos and fled in disguise. The big guy said it was incredible how her father had survived in that manner, and the old man realized that if the zombies were not attacking him due to his sin, perhaps it was a phenomenon worth investigating. Then Yuera asked what they were planning to do, and Jiang seemed to be reluctant. He explained that the weather was truly terrible right now, and Yebai did not seem inclined to leave. Zhao Heng told her to ask Yebai herself, because maybe he had created something amazing. But the scene cuts to him saying no. He still had not yet finished, so there was no reason for her to try and rush him. And he told her not to interrupt him, besides bringing him food. The big guy said he was now going too far, and should at least attempt to comfort her a little. Our hero then asked why the big guy didn't go rescue her father. He was a bit confused by that statement, but then he saw that our hero had apparently made him a gun and a blade. Yebai explained he had put his blood on them, so he could wield them. The big guy was hesitant, but was able to lift them much more easily than before. Yebai explained that these weapons with their embedded crystals, could read his very thoughts. However, just like how he controlled those energy blades, he must be cautious or he could deplete his energy. Zhao Hang got excited, saying he had committed it all to memory. Then he asked about the firearm he'd received, and our boy confirmed. He explained that to discharge it, you first must wait for the gun to accumulate energy. The projectiles were powerful, but you had to aim well because you couldn't fire too many times. Zhao Hang got excited, saying this thing resembled a laser cannon. He ran out, saying he was eager to test everything out. He rushed from the base out into the storm, aimed at the sky, and fired a laser beam into the clouds. He immediately began yelling that it was truly incredible. He readied the blade, made a practice swing, saying that now he possessed the same power as Yabai. The old man was furious with the big guy for being so reckless with everything, and Zhao Hang was thrilled, saying he was now invincible. He put on his boots and a raincoat, saying that no matter what kind of zombie came, he could easily defeat them. He looked at the camera and told her not to worry, that he would bring her father back to her, safe and sound. She was a little concerned and asked if he could really do it. The old man said that for now, they could only observe to see how long he'd remain. So full of confidence, he was wearing a communication headset, getting his directions, and the old man explained that he had to go through the east. That was the path towards the mountain where there were no cameras, so he had to be extremely careful. Zhao Hang told the old man to be quiet, saying he could handle this. He followed the given path, and soon got excited when he saw a group of zombies coming his way. The creatures advanced, and he flashed a grin, saying it was time to test his friend's new gift. He unleashed the legendary green crescent slash, cutting them all in half. He began to shout that he was too powerful now and feared nothing. However, that's when he noticed something off to the side. Another person had witnessed that bizarre purple tornado. He dispatched a few more of the zombies and asked if the people in the room had also seen it. The rain seemed to be getting even more intense, and a purple tornado was materializing on the eastern side. The old man said the camera was unable to see it, but his sensors were reading wind speeds approaching level 6. It was extremely dangerous to remain outside, so he should return to the lab as quickly as possible. Zhao Hang apologized to Yuer and said that unfortunately, he could not win against the raw power of the gods. And old man Jiang told Yuer to stay calm, assuring her that her father would surely find a safe place to protect himself. Zhao Hang then approached the main gate. Suddenly, the security alarm began to blare, and the old man was startled, going to see what had just occurred. He then told everyone to calm down, saying he had only brought back a zombie, because it seemed Yabai had requested him to bring one. Excited to see the zombie was still alive, he said, "Wait a second," and ran off, saying he would be back in a flash. The old man, just as enthusiastic, noted that it was still animate. Alive is a strong word for that particular creature. The old man praised the big guy, who became quite excited, and Yuer was happy to see that. They seemed to be getting along much better. Meanwhile, Yabai was in his creation phase. Man, the boy had already finished all the mechanics for the arm. The rain continued for a long while, until at long last, the sun started to break through in this cursed apocalypse. As usual, the zombies went berserk when they saw the sun. Man, they went so wild, they all began to mutate. From out of nowhere, the creatures turned to crimson red and began to scale buildings. There was a poor young girl, so happy that the sun had finally come out, until one of the large ones appeared, and the creature was now face to face with her. Her father heard her scream and immediately ran to see what had transpired. The entire family became a quick meal. Now, the zombies had truly evolved, leaping and invading everyone's homes. There was no longer a single safe place in that building. The schoolmates of our hero were fleeing in desperation. One of them was about to be caught, but the zombie got struck on the back of the neck. Man, someone smashed another one in the head. The albino appeared. He pulled out the pearl and looked at his friends. He immediately recognized Feng, the blonde who had been considering eating the pearl. The scene then shifts back to the street, where a swarm of zombies was running. They were all in formation, and atop a building was dear Ruashi, with her 2 monster servants by her side. Jubo remarked it was amazing how they were moving so orderly. Ruashi laughed. She said she had been in pain for many days, and wanted to know if they had found Yabai's location. Wang Peng said he was in a house on the mountain that looked like a research lab, and it would be easy to get in and finish him. Ruashi, however, said that would not be any fun. She wanted to ensure he knew exactly who was behind his demise, and before that, she wanted him to feel despair closing in. Back at the house, Zhao Hang and Yuer were about to depart, but then they heard an alarm. and Zhao Heng asked what that noise was. The old man immediately told them not to go outside, because something very large was approaching. And strangely, a swarm of zombies was gathering in the city. The oddest thing was that they seemed to be heading for them. Zhao Heng, terrified, asked how many of them there were. The old man said there were at least 1,000. The big guy was confused and asked if they were the only humans left in this place. The old man replied that he had no idea, but it would be best to let Yabai know about this. The big guy ran off and hammered on the door, calling out to our hero, saying that over 1,000 zombies were coming. Our hero said the professor had already informed him. The big guy, excited, asked if he was prepared to kill them all. Our hero replied that he was not ready at all. Scared, the big guy then asked how he would deal with these creatures. Yabai said he had instructed them to hurry and begin learning how to handle these situations. He still had not completed his research. And if this man was the real Professor Zhang, he knew that the two of them together could solve this. The big guy said none of what he was saying made any sense, but Yabai remained silent and kept on working. With that, the big guy left, saying that in the end, he could only depend on himself. He climbed a watchtower, and when he looked down, he was horrified. The horde was already at their gate. He already knew that even the walls of this lab would not hold against a group that large. He ran to the car, saying he couldn't let them swarm around. The old man was scared, wondering what he was about to do. The big guy said to open up the gate, because he had a plan, and if it were to fail, everyone had better escape from this place. Yo! Uwer was screaming, but the next second he was already outside. He drove past the zombies, pulled out his gun, and fired the laser. With that, he annihilated the first group. He was thrilled because there were so many of them. He didn't even have to aim correctly. He kept firing and blowing everyone up. But from a distance, Ruashi was watching all of this. That damn girl is a true villain, but she's a dangerous one. Wang Peng was on top of the tower, impressed with the weapon Zhao Heng was now wielding. However, Ruashi just wanted to see how long they would last. Zhao Heng kept firing and blowing up the zombies. The problem was that no matter how many he killed, their numbers did not seem to be shrinking. Then suddenly, a fireball hit right under the truck's tire. At that moment, Uwer and the old man screamed. And man, the truck was nearly flipped over. Zhao Heng had to climb out through the door. But standing right before him was the fire zombie. He was enraged that this damn girl had launched a sneak attack. He fired a shot at her, saying he was no longer afraid. However, she evaded it and launched another fireball. Zhao Heng dodged as well, pulling off a midair matrix move and fired a bullet. The creature fled, and he called her a coward, telling her to return. The problem was that now he was completely surrounded by zombies. He fired a few more shots, and Grandpa Jiang told him to get back here immediately, because it was impossible for him to make it out alive. Zhao Heng started running, realizing he had just fallen into a trap. But here came Wang Peng from above. There was no way for Zhao Heng to possibly escape. But man, this big guy was incredibly fast. Dodging once again, he fell to the ground on his side and almost landed a shot. He drew the blade and nearly landed a slash as well. Impressive. He was fighting toe-to-toe with Wang Peng. Wang Peng wondered how this big man seemed more agile than Yabai. He extended his weapon and commanded Zhao Heng to die, but the creature ran off. Man, this bald, big guy made every one of them flee. Meanwhile, Ruashi was observing from atop the tower. Here she comes, up to no good. At that very moment, the zombies that had been still began running towards him. Zhao Heng was confused as to why they suddenly moved so differently, but he still had the sword that Yabai had created and unleashed the green crescent slash. The problem was that they were approaching so fast. He couldn't kill them in time, and he started to flee. What's this? Zombies were now being thrown at him. The poor guy wondered why these creatures were raining down on him, and the monsters kept on falling beside him. Obviously, it was Wang Peng, practicing his zombie throwing skills. He grabbed another one and hurled it at Zhao Heng. Zhao Heng had to use one of his gun's bullets to blow it up midair. He kept on running, but was now pleading to be saved. At that very moment, one of the thrown zombies landed and grabbed his leg in a tight grip. Man, it came in for a bite. Luckily, Zhao Heng managed to slash it. The problem was that he had now fallen to the ground. There was no time to get back up, so his only option was to land shot. But then, a green light appeared. An energy wave swept through everything in front of him. A second cannon blast shot past him. Wang Peng and the other one looked, trying to figure out what was happening ahead of the zombie swarm. There were flashes of light rising. Another barrage flew by, and then came a massive punch like something out of Transformers. What's this, man? Our boy turned into Optimus Prime. The kid had constructed claws and legs. He was now fully armored. Wang Peng got all excited, saying he had at last arrived. The old man cheered, saying the boy was incredible. The big guy was amazed by all the armor our hero had constructed over the past few days. But Yabai told him to focus because the enemy was close by. He commanded him to go back and kill the zombies on the right flank. Meanwhile, he would handle the ones on the left until the main monsters showed themselves. Wang Peng said that with him here, he was certain they could win this. Immediately, he went back to blasting the creatures. Yabai looked around and even activated a thruster on his robot. The kid took off into the air, activated his giant Optimus Prime fist, and smashed everything. Man, this kid had become unbelievably strong. The big guy was impressed, saying he had gotten a bit too powerful, at least after killing this many zombies. They were sure they'd have enough pearls to create more weapons. Excited, he returned to finishing off more of the zombies. That damn Ruashi was still observing from a distance. Wang Peng, scared, said that with this new power, there was no way for them to get any closer. She got enraged, saying that damn boy thought he was safe because of that armor. Obviously, she was not going to let that happen. Another punch smashed into the zombies, crushing even more of them. A laser fired forward as the old man watched on his screen. He was amazed, saying that the boy's exoskeleton was something that shouldn't exist. In this time, he couldn't fathom how he had used all those scrap materials he had discarded to create something of this magnitude. That's when Uera revealed that what he was utilizing was a metal that came from inside the zombies' heads. The old man was astounded by this new information. Now it was clear why Yabai had been concealing this from him for so long. He ran off, saying he was in a mess with that zombie they had captured to study. Meanwhile, outside, Wang Peng was giving commands to the zombies again. Once more, he was sending them all to eliminate Yabai. The entire ground began to shake, and the big guy said it felt like a strong earthquake. Yabai told him to stop thinking and to just keep on killing. But then he noticed that the zombies were, bizarrely, starting to leap towards him. As soon as they drew near, Ruashi clenched her fist, and the creatures detonated right in front of him. Yabai had no idea what was happening. Ruashi celebrated, saying that soon he would be dead. She kept on sending waves of creatures and making them explode in front of him. Yabai couldn't recall the creatures being able to self-destruct in his previous life. Meanwhile, Wang Peng observed everything from his side. Zhu Bo remarked that this battle looked like a clash between two gods, and there was no way they could interfere. He then revealed that Ruashi had consumed 7 pearls to become this way. Her body kept on melting and reforming, showing just how much she despised Yabai. Zhu Bo asked if consuming more pearls made things better, since instead of becoming a monster, she had instead gained powers. But Wang Peng said, seeing how much she had suffered, he wasn't eager to test that theory himself. Meanwhile, Ruashi kept sending zombies to explode before Yabai. He had already deduced that someone was controlling them. He turned, defended himself from an attack, and fired a blast to the tower. Man, the boy had perfect aim, and Ruashi was forced to dodge. Wang Peng yelled out for her, and like a fool, she almost fell, but she managed to levitate in the air. Then she was startled. Yabai was already right before her, with Optimus Prime's massive hand. He blasted another shot, and she pulled zombies to shield herself. Man, she made a barrier of creatures. But I think they're all about to be blown away. She kept commanding the creatures. But at that moment, he leaped over and went in for a punch. She barely dodged, moving to the side, and Yabai opened his giant hand once more. She went in for the one-on-one and activated hers too. But man, she took a direct hit to the face. The poor girl got launched far away, and before she could react, she was pinned down to the ground. Optimus Prime, 1 waifu, 0. Yabai noted that if she survived those gunshots, she must have consumed the pearls, and he asked how many she had eaten. She seemed unable to answer and activated her power in her hand. But then came the crushing stomp. Man, it's better if you don't resist anymore, warrior. She began to scream out in agony. But he said that in their former life, she had also caused him to lose an arm. And today was the day she would finally pay for it. But then he heard a sound from nearby. Wang Peng came running, desperately shouting at him to let her go. But Yabai just opened his giant hand and fired a shot. The monster managed to dodge and began to circle around it. He took advantage of the opening and jumped over. But our hero didn't hesitate and struck Wang Peng's arm with one hand, holding Ruashi with his other hand. He activated the laser and hit him right in the chest. Man, bad luck for the fool, who was thrown far away. Seeing Wang Peng defeated and Ruashi easily captured, Zhu Bo knew she stood no chance. Perhaps her best choice was to flee from this place. The poor girl was still trapped under the giant robot. Our hero remarked that it was crazy, how she seemed to be one of the chosen ones, since she had consumed pearls and still kept a human form. However, he knew just how dangerous she was, so to prevent any future problems, he was going to eliminate her right now. But just as he was about to crush her, the zombies began to mutate. Yabai was shocked and wondered why they had already reached rank 1. Yu reported that more and more zombies were surrounding the lab. Zhao Heng was holding the line, but some had already breached the perimeter and were climbing the walls. Ruashi started to cackle. She said they were all going to die and become her zombie slaves. Tired of this, Yabai threw her far away and she crashed into the zombies. He prepared his giant hand and unleashed a double laser. He clearly scoffed, thinking she was dead. But you know how stories go. She's probably still alive, right? Meanwhile, the big guy was panicking because his gun was out of ammo. He only had his sword left. But he was surrounded on all sides, and right at that moment, a rank 1 zombie leaped at him. He barely reacted in time and defended himself with his blade. He wondered if this was a new type of ability user. He slashed right down the center of the creature, but instead of slicing it cleanly, it only left a minor scratch. He was terrified. He looked back, and all the creatures were starting to mutate. The entire base was completely overrun by these new zombies, and more of them kept coming. Zhao Heng slashed at one of the creature's chests and started running. He had no idea what kind of monster this was, because his sword was no longer working. Maybe these were the rank 1 mutants that Yabai had mentioned. Yu kept calling for Zhao Heng, asking if he was okay. At the same time, some creatures had jumped over the barrier and were now approaching the research area. But Jiang was absorbed in his research and paid no mind to what was happening outside. Zhao was trying to flee, but he couldn't find Yabai and had no idea how to get back into the stronghold. Then Optimus Prime showed up and grabbed the big guy. Zhao was elated and asked if our hero could now fly. He replied it was just a jump with some gliding, and ordered him to go kill the creatures approaching the lab. Now, to kill these rank 1 creatures, it would require more than one slash. But you must be careful, because these creatures were much more agile than before. The big guy collapsed on the ground, completely exhausted, saying he could finally breathe for a moment. At that moment, Yabai leaped to the top of the gate, prepared the Optimus Fist, and began to vaporize everything in sight. The problem was that while he was clearing one side, the creatures were now invading from the other. The big guy was completely spent, calling out to Yu, saying he was extremely thirsty. He then heard a sound nearby and saw a creature approaching. It was getting closer, when he managed to grab the blade and stab it in the chest. Man, he threw the first one down to the ground and ripped it in half. This kid doesn't give up and hit it again. Then, Yu appeared, saying she brought the water he asked for. She asked if Zhao Heng was all right, and upon getting closer, remarked that this zombie was quite different from the others. Inside the creature's skull, he found a crimson pearl. Meanwhile, Professor Jiang finally discovered what they had been discussing. Even though the stone was dark, he could see a strange green glow emanating from it. The question now is, do humans become mutants because of this strange metal, or does the metal form when they turn into zombies? It was a year to uncover all the secrets of that substance. Meanwhile, outside, our hero was cleaning house. He killed one here, smashed 2 more over there. A single swipe of his hand, and he finally said it was done. He shouted from outside, telling the big guy to come get the pearls, because he had now cleared out everything. Zhao Heng gave him a thumbs up, saying he was truly efficient. Upon seeing the huge pile of dead monsters, the big guy complained that it would take an eternity to harvest them all. He turned to Yabai, saying that if he helped him gather them, he also wanted a mecha suit for himself. Our hero said he'd consider it later, because now he needed to sleep. But then the old man came over to speak with him. He said it was now time for Yabai to reveal all of the secrets about that mysterious pearl. Meanwhile, outside, the big guy started his harvesting. There were just so many creatures, and the most frustrating part was doing it all by himself. Back at the base, Grandpa Jiang was intrigued by the rare material. Yabai explained that this pearl begins to form in the brain. The moment a person becomes a zombie, the longer it is exposed to light, the more energy the object can accumulate. It was as if the zombies themselves could perform a strange form of photosynthesis. The old man said it was fascinating to know that's how it worked. But after he analyzed it, he had found nothing to corroborate what Yabai described. However, he did observe that inside this object, there were some active metallic molecules that seemed to have a reaction to light and heat. Furthermore, it was incredibly durable and had an affinity for both metal and blood. Yabai confirmed this, saying it had a special affinity for human blood. That is why the virus spreads much more quickly in humans than in any other species, and the absorption of light makes them continue to mutate after a specific amount of time. The old man said that now it made perfect sense why during the day these zombies would just stand in the middle of the road, staring up at the sun. However, today they were bizarrely running around like a bunch of maniacs. Yabai explained. The professor asked if he meant the spine-covered monster, or the one that wielded fire and hurled flames. Yabai revealed those two were just common mutants. However, the one commanding the zombies was a high-level mutant from his class, named Ruashi. The old man was completely bewildered, realizing this single item caused immense changes in a human body. Yabai said they had studied it for a time, and the only fact he knew was if you ate the item, you would gain a powerful mutation ability. Ability users were always a grave danger, which was why they must be slain as soon as discovered. The old man was still dazed by the item, the mutations, and now the different tiers of zombies. He told our hero he was certain school taught none of this, so where had he learned it? Yabai just said that perhaps he would tell him later, but it would be more rewarding if the old man discovered it through his own research. The professor then said he wanted to see the new weapons Yabai had just forged. Yabai, exhausted, said it was fine. Just don't dismantle the mecha, because he was going to need it again. The professor left, excited, while Yabai said he had to sleep, because he was now completely drained of energy. Yue just watched on today. She wanted to ask our hero for aid in finding her father. However, she knew he'd battled all day and must be very tired. So she draped a small blanket over him and sat by him, thinking about how deeply she missed her father. The sun was now beginning to set outside. The big guy was so weary he couldn't move an inch. He thought it would be incredible to have an item that could effortlessly extract all these pearls. What he failed to see was a creature observing him. It was Ju Bo, thinking that all hope was lost. Since thousands of zombies had been slain in one day, she assumed that Wang Peng and Ruashi had been killed, so she was debating whether she should just surrender. The issue was she knew she'd be killed without any hesitation, because she was a monster. The even bigger problem was that these new, rank 2 zombies appear to be hostile, even to creatures like herself. She used the last of her strength to summon flames and incinerate those monsters. But if more creatures like that emerged or more started evolving, things would not be easy for her. The only option she could see was to eat more pearls and become much stronger. But suddenly she stopped and saw the albino atop a tree. That danderphone was just staring down at her. She was just about to speak, but he pointed his hand and leaped in another direction. He fled, and it seemed as if she might have pursued him. Meanwhile, back at the research base, Yue was asleep. The big guy was passed out beside her, drained after harvesting all those pearls. Yue awoke in the dead of night and saw that Yabai had already woken up. As always, our apocalypse mechanic was back in the workshop with his heavy hammer in hand. He was back to his work. The sun rose, and we were back at that first convenience store. From the beginning, Yue's father slowly approached. He went into the store, looking for her, but the entire place was a wreck. On one of the tables, he discovered a note she left saying she went to find it. The problem was that now he had no clue where she was either. Outside, the area was teeming with the undead. As always, they stood motionless with glowing eyes, staring at the sun. Back at the base, a spiked-up Batmobile had been created. It was armored with 4 massive wheels. Obviously, the one who was going to pilot it already had a huge grin. This Yabai is truly something else. The boy built an entire car in a single night. The big guy, thrilled, asked if it was forged from rare metals, and if it could transform into a mecha. Our hero said it was just a normal vehicle, but he needed to know it held 2,000 pearls and 12 rank 1 zombie energy cores. The big guy agreed it suited him perfectly and asked when they were going to go test it. He was excited to leave and find Yue's father, but at that instant, she asked them to wait. She said that this time, she wanted to go with them. However, Yabai said that outside was full of rank 1 zombies, and she would surely die if she went. She insisted she had followed all of their orders, but this time, she wanted to personally find her father. Our hero told her to stop being so difficult, or he would tell the professor to lock her in the lab. The poor girl began to cry, calling out for her father. The big guy scolded our hero, asking why he had to make her cry. Suddenly, Professor Jiang appeared and told her to calm down. He showed her a brand new drone, saying he had repaired it. It was his very first creation using that strange material. Not only could it now hold much more energy and fly longer, but its communication and stability were also improved. This way, she could stay safely inside the base, while still being able to help find her father. Yabai praised the old man, saying he had quickly learned how to use the material. The old man chuckled, saying he was no true professor, but at least he could create something like this. Our hero then prepped the car and told the big guy it was time. Excited, Zhao Heng couldn't wait to fire up the Rhino. Yuer asked him to be careful, and the big guy hit the gas. The Batmobile shot from a base and tore through the woods. He was amazed that any surface now felt like smooth asphalt. Then they got on the road, crashing through all the other cars. Excited that his new car made the others look like toys. A while later, Yabai said they had spotted her father in this area. They continued driving through the city, but the big guy noted that it was strange. There were no zombies to be seen. That's when one of them grinned, and a swarm of zombies appeared on the rooftops. The next instant, they were crawling all over the vehicle, pounding on the metal. The large creatures were trying to break through everything, but nothing was happening at all. One of them appeared at the windshield, and the big guy told the creature to stop obstructing his view. He turned to Yabai and asked if the car had any weapons. Our hero said that gunpowder was obsolete, so he had created something much better. As soon as he hit a button, the entire car was enveloped in crackling green electricity. The lightning struck the zombies, and man, they were vaporized in an instant. I was just as stunned as the big guy. Jaw dropped in complete astonishment. The protagonist then said if so many rank ones were here, no one could be alive, so they should change course. They took a different road, but from the top of a building, someone was observing them. The person smiled, saying this looked quite interesting. They approached what seemed to be a shopping center, and the big guy said that was where. They had spotted her father on the cameras. Our hero said to launch the drone, and told Yuer to begin the search for him. With that, she began to pilot the drone, scanning each and every one of the rooms. The big guy asked what they should do in the meantime. Our hero said if he wanted to explore the lower levels, he could, but for now, he was going to go back to sleep. The big guy said he felt more secure inside the vehicle, so maybe a good plan would be to drive and sound the horn. They continued driving down the street, and Yuer said she saw some zombies approaching them. The big guy got scared for a moment, but then got excited to test out the new weapons. He pressed a button, and spikes shot out from the tires. With that, he drove at the creatures and sliced through everything. Another button fired off a laser, vaporizing half the entire street. Yuer asked him to be more careful, reminding him that her father could be in one of those buildings. He pressed the very next button, hoping it wasn't too destructive. In front of the car, a meat grinder appeared. He drove over the first of the creatures, and the system notified him he'd obtained another pearl. The big guy's wish for a collection tool had come true, and he wanted to give Yabai a hug. The car began to swerve all over the road, and Yuer was confused about what was going on inside. The big guy had hit his head 5 different times, but at that very moment, Yuer screamed, saying she had located her father's car. It was around 500 meters away, and she was sending the footage. Zhao Heng told her not to be afraid. They would definitely find her father. However, she mentioned the car was wrecked and the windshield was smashed. She was concerned something bad had happened to her father. When he came to get all those supplies, Yabai told her to check the drone to see if he'd left a note, because he probably was not too far away. Yuer was still worried, wanting to know where her father was. Suddenly, she began to faint and slammed her face on the keyboard. Immediately, the old man rushed to her, not understanding what was happening. Back with Zhao Heng a short time later, he brought the car to a stop. Yabai asked the professor how Yuer was. He explained that she had passed out, and it appeared her illness was worsening. Apparently, she had been so focused on finding her father that she neglected to take her medication. Fortunately, the professor had some in storage. However, treating this specific illness was not his specialty, and finding a doctor in this apocalypse would be even harder. He told Yabai to go to the hospital to get some medicine, while he would do his best to keep her stable. At that instant, the big guy returned and said he hadn't found any note or any info inside the car. What was odd was that her father had left many supplies behind, so after the wreck, he must have fled in a great panic. Additionally, the big guy discovered something very strange. There were black containers with no logos or any descriptions, and they appeared to hold some kind of strange pills. The protagonist said they might be a type of medicine, so they would take them back to Jiang for inspection. With that, they started the vehicle and drove towards the hospital. The professor said that for now, he would have to keep an eye on Yuer, so he wouldn't be able to assist them with the drones. Back inside the car, The big guy was sad to learn that Yuer had leukemia. Now he understood why Yabai hadn't let her come with him. He talked about locating the medicine, but Yabai told him to be quiet and just drive to the hospital. Yabai knew that in 2 years, all the resources in the city would be gone, and this place would become a desolate wasteland. And the worst part was, at the current rate, it was happening much faster than he had anticipated. Maybe, in the end, he wouldn't be able to change a thing, and perhaps it was better to consider a different path than letting her live in this agonizing world. The scene shifted to someone injecting a fluid into Jubo's arm, which immediately started to regenerate. She was confused as to how that could be possible. Her inner flames had been rekindled. The blonde in the hat said it was impressive that she was a fire user. Jubo thanked him and asked what organization he was from. The blonde opened his arms and declared they specialized in finding people with special abilities. Their mission was to create a utopia for the chosen in this world. Jubo, confused, asked if the blonde was also an ability user. He said yes, and there were many more just like him. She asked if it was possible to keep a human form like his. He said yes, that his organization had the solution. They could live in peace and happiness in this new world. Meanwhile, in front of the hospital, the big guy was standing at the entrance before him. He saw graffiti saying this was private land and to stay away. He told our hero that the place was occupied by others. So what was their next move? Yabai simply answered in his Optimus Prime mode that since it was a tactical location, it was to be expected that this would happen. But he ignored it all and smashed his way inside. The big guy thought it was strange how silent the place was. He kept on seeing signs telling them to go back or they'd die. But Yabai just told them to scout different sections and communicate via their earpieces. As they walked, the big guy said this was the second place he hated most in the world. He despised the scent of disinfectant, but started to sniff the air. Obviously, in his apocalypse, no one was using any disinfectant, right? But the oddest thing was that he smelled a sweet fruit. Suddenly, he began to feel faint and collapsed to the floor. Yabai immediately called out, asking him what had just happened. He wasn't answering, and our hero found it highly suspicious, and something began to seep out from the ceiling. Yabai smelled it and instantly suspected it was some type of poison. But Optimus Prime was prepared, and he put on his mask. He activated his giant hand and blasted the air duct. He warned the big guy that this place was a trap and told him to get out. But someone appeared next to him. Man, our hero didn't hesitate and went in for a punch at the doctor. But bizarrely, he stopped just before he connected. She touched the robot and said his mecha was really cool. She then noted that it must have been forged using zombie pearls and that she wished to meet the person who created it. Yabai was uncertain if she was an ability user and simply asked who she was. The girl introduced herself as Tang Tang and claimed she was a sweet and genius doctor. Yabai, however, asked why the poison and whether she had consumed any pearls. She said she released the poison to sedate any invaders, but was curious about this pearl-eating thing. Here, Yabai told her to forget it and asked if she was the only one here. She said she was the sole princess of this castle and asked if the Demon King was attempting to capture her. Yabai, exhausted from this, asked if she had no fear of death. The crazy girl said death was as sweet as candy to her, and if she died for what she loved the most, she would have absolutely no regrets. Our hero wondered if she was sane. He then asked what she meant by being a genius, and in what field she was specialized. She said she was a doctor, an expert in viruses. Now our hero was truly interested. He immediately wanted to know what she had learned about the pearls, and if she used them to create those poisons. However, she didn't want to be asked so many questions, and told him that he was being quite annoying. She said he kept on asking, but never revealed anything. So, if he wanted to learn something, he would have to tell her who forged that mecha. Our hero thought for a brief second. Then he said they had a research facility and that if she wanted, he could take her to it. The girl got very excited. However, she warned that she had one final request, and he would have to agree to it. The scene cuts to a desolate desert, where a car was stopped in the middle of the road. Zhao Heng called out for someone named Ha Qian and asked where she was. The girl replied, saying she hated people who broke their word, and asked if someone named Xiao Qi had arrived yet. The man on the motorcycle, who must have been Xiao Qi, said that after this one mission, they would return and get married. Someone told them to stop their flirting during a mission. The truck started to get closer. The three of them, excited, said that just like Xiao had predicted, they were all following a plan. The truck passed right before the car, and they awaited the signal. However, the big guy asked Xiao Qi where the hell the signal was. Poor Ha Qian had been hit by the truck. Meanwhile, Xiao Qi was trying to flee, saying that things were getting very weird. Another car pulled up behind the big guys. That's when he realized their plan had been leaked to someone. The big guy woke up, and all of that had been a nightmare, because he had passed out from the girl's poison. He saw the doctor before him with a smug expression on her face, and Yabai asked if he'd had enough sleep. He was a bit dazed, and the crazy girl was giggling. She told him that he had been hit with a special toxin she created that makes people sleep for 3 hours straight. And the interesting thing was that if she hadn't given the antidote, his body would have dissolved into a pool of blood. Yabai just told them to stop their chatting and start loading all of those items into the truck. Tang Tang politely asked Zhao Hang for assistance, but he was not very eager. Then she changed her tone and told him he had better listen, or he would end up inside one of those jars. The poor guy quickly grabbed the jars and got to work. She thanked him, saying they were true gentlemen. Meanwhile, Yabai wanted to know who she truly was. He recalled this sweet poison from his previous life. One of the primary ways to battle zombies in the future was with this kind of terrifying chemical agent. If this girl was one of the first to create such a thing, it would be wise to have her on the team and help her develop. At the very least, you couldn't let someone like her fall into another gang's hands. A short while later, everything was loaded. The car held much more than it looked. She said that it was very cute, and that it seemed to have also been made using the pearls. She remarked that it was a perfect fit for a princess like her. The big guy asked our hero if it was truly okay to bring along someone so crazy. Yabai replied that they needed her research on the medicines and her help with their trip. But then he heard a noise. A mutated creature appeared atop a building. It was a chimera-like lion with many eyes, and everyone was terrified. Man, when the creatures saw the three of them, it began to salivate. It let out a roar, and the big guy asked if it was another ability user or some kind of super zombie. But Yabai just told them to stop wasting time out here and get into the vehicle. The creature lunged at them, and our hero activated Optimus Prime. He landed a powerful blow on the creature's arm, sending it crashing down to the ground. While the big guy started the car, Yabai managed to restrain the creature with his arms. He told them to take the doctor back to the base. While he handled this monster, then he landed a punch to the back of its neck. He hit it with another laser, and from inside, the big guy was wondering why this one was so much larger than the others. Tang Tang explained that this big dog had been circling the hospital for a long while, which is why nobody came near it. Zhao Heng asked why she had not mentioned a monster like that. She looked confused, saying that since they came from the outside, she thought it was already dealt with. As she got closer, she said that with all the advanced gear they had, it shouldn't be a problem. After all, they were humanity's final hope for its survival. The big guy told her to stop her joking, but she insisted she was not being dishonest. She had researched the zombie virus, and the people who hadn't mutated were surely the chosen ones. Outside, Yabai kept battling the creature, landing another powerful punch once more. The timing of events compared to his past life made no sense. These mutants were not natural animals that had evolved just because of the zombie virus. They were a mix of the virus and a lot of advanced engineering, something that should not exist at this time. The creature shot a beam, and he barely dodged it. He smiled, saying he was finally starting to see what was happening. He fired another shot with the Optimus Prime, hitting the creature in the neck. But the shot deflected off and hit the building. Yabai realized that the creature could still reflect his attacks. The beast lunged at him and swiped its claws, but he dodged to the side. He grabbed one of its bosses and started a wraparound. With that, Yabai told her to stop being so disobedient and tore two pieces right from her back. The monstrous creature collapsed down to the ground. Exhausted, she fired another beam, but Yabai easily blocked it with his hand. He said that her moves were now useless, and it was his turn. He launched himself at her, with the robot charging forward. With a single strike, he kicked her square in the head and started to smash her into the ground. Man, the boy was truly brutal. When he had finished off the monster, among its remains, he found a massive pearl. Our hero examined it in his palm and said that once he transplanted something like this, things would become much easier than before. Meanwhile, the blonde guy on top of the building was watching and said this was going to give him a major headache. Yabai called the big guy, asking if he could hear him. Unfortunately, they were now too far and the signal wasn't working anymore. It was time for him to return, so he started flying with the Optimus. As he passed by the buildings, he glanced to the side and saw the blonde guy. The blonde waved and said it was a pleasure to meet him. Man, Yabai immediately stretched out his hand and blew him up right before his eyes. The blonde appeared on another building and asked if Yabai had some kind of bias against ability users. Yabai didn't hesitate and sent another explosion his way, but the blonde said he wasn't interested in fighting him. He teleported onto the robot's arm and said he was only there to deliver a message, and he would not take long. Yabai crushed him with his hand. The blonde said if he wanted to chat in that position, it was perfectly fine with him. He then introduced himself as Songbin and invited Yabai to visit him in the northern district. Yabai continued to crush him, while the doctor said he was interested in calling the medical girl. However, when he looked at his hand, the man had vanished. It seemed he possessed some sort of body substitution ability. The threat wasn't massive, but it was extremely hard to handle something like that. And the most bizarre part was that the damned secret society was already being formed. Yabai didn't want to think about it, but he had to prepare for the absolute worst. Interestingly, the name of the secret organization was literally Secret Organization. These guys were not too creative, but Yabai knew that in 50 years, it would control the majority of resources and the Awakened. The organization's main goal was to create a world that was dominated by the ability users. That mutant creature was likely created by them, and they had probably been observing him for some time. It did make sense for this organization to already be active, which meant they probably had someone from the future as well. The Batmobile arrived back at the base. Tang said it was a fairly normal place to have made that metro car. The big guy noted that she had some nerve, coming to a place she knew absolutely nothing about, but she said that she trusted her gut. She then asked Zhao Heng to hurry and take out the experiments, saying she was doing it for Yuer. The old man appeared and said it seemed they had truly found a doctor. Tang immediately approached and asked if he was the professor who had created the mecha and the vehicle. Before he could say a single thing, she said she already knew it was him, and that she was specifically here to listen to him. The doctor commented that he dressed quite poorly, but was obviously a mad scientist. Grandpa Jiang was confused, wondering where Yabai had found this crazy girl. However, he did recognize the name Professor Tang and knew she was a young genius who had a PhD in viruses. She said she was honored and was clearly flustered. Meanwhile, the old man wondered how a girl like her had survived, but she just had to cut the small talk, adding that she was here to research the pearls with him. He was amazed that she had one of the pearls and praised her, saying it was incredible that she had created the mecha and car. She called it black gold and asked if he had invented that name. Now Grandpa Jiang wasn't certain if he should reveal that. He wasn't the one who had created any of it, especially since it seemed she knew less than he did. And as far as he knew, Yabai wanted to keep a secret. He then spread his arms and told her they could collaborate because he had made some incredible new discoveries. However, first, she needed to assist him with something else. The scene shifted to the medical bay where Yuer was lying in bed. A while later, Tang emerged and the professor asked how she was. Tang removed her mask and asked if Yuer was his granddaughter. The old man said not quite, but he thought of her as such. Tang made a sign with her hand, and the old man asked if that meant the girl would be okay. Tang said no, so the old man asked if it meant she had 3 years left. Tang corrected him, saying she only had 3 months. She had seen many people with this same sickness and had no idea how the girl was even still alive. Her body would not accept any treatment in this condition, and the worst thing was that there wasn't much they could do. Jiang asked if she was telling him to accept that the girl was going to die, but Tang said maybe they could make use of that. A short while later, Yuer began to wake up. She heard the old man speaking outside, asking if they were truly going to give her that medicine. Tang replied that it was not exactly that, but that she was thinking of using the material to create a new type of medicine. She had observed in some tests that the material appeared to emit an energy that could regenerate the cells around it. The old man said that's why some people who ingested it went through that strange transformation. She asked what kind of fool would do such a thing. And the old man replied he had seen 2 people who consumed it and became unbelievably powerful. Tang was thoughtful for a second and said that, aside from a guaranteed death, she couldn't imagine anything else it might cause. She then suggested they focus on the next subject, which was making a medicine using the material to help the girl. Obviously, they did not have much time, but they also had to be sure she wouldn't become a monster. Meanwhile, Zhao Heng finally placed the last object on the shelf. Looking at it, Yuer wondered why she valued this junk so much. At that moment, Tang appeared and thanked the big guy. He immediately asked if Yuer's sickness could be cured. She responded that with a new idea, perhaps it was possible. Yabai said to go check on Yuer, but she said there was no need, since he seemed to be handling things quite well. As he was leaving, she asked about them finding Yuere's father. He said they were searching, and she urged them to find him very quickly, since it might help with her treatment. Back in the city, Yabai was atop a building with his giant robot. The sun was scorching, and he hadn't found Yuere's father. He decided to fly around and look for any water until he located a shopping mall and decided to go inside. He broke through the glass and found himself before a pool. Obviously, even though there was water, it was not drinkable. But he heard a bizarre sound and began to investigate. Suddenly, something strange flew past him, and he quickly took aim with the robot, firing a laser beam out of nowhere. The creature burst from the wall and lunged right at it. Man, the thing was massive. But luckily, his robot's arms were also huge. He was baffled by this new monster and readied his hand to fire. But the creature knocked him away. This time, Yabai crashed hard into the wall. He cursed the beast and fired once again, but it dodged easily and attacked him from the side. Yabai tried to punch, but the creature was too quick and dodged again. It managed to land a blow, but Yabai grabbed hold of it. He pulled the creature aside and slammed it to the ground. Once again, he activated the laser and hit it right in the neck. The monster fell away, revealing a woman emerging from it. Man, now these creatures were firing lasers too, and Yabai was completely shocked. Meanwhile, out on the street, the big guy was looking for Yabai. He couldn't find him until the drone activated. It was Yuere asking if they were still outside. He told her to rest up more and let them do the searching, but she said she couldn't sleep and felt better helping them. He told her it was fine, but not to overexert herself. With that, she reactivated the drone and continued to search. But soon, she found something very odd, and the big guy asked what it was. She explained that a strange group of zombies was heading to the construction site. They wondered if there might be any survivors there. That's when she spotted a girl lying on top of a container. He saw from the camera and said he recognized her. Yuere asked how he possibly knew her. Seized by that very man before. But she vanished at some point, never to be seen again. Yuere insisted that they must help her. So the big man instantly deployed the vehicle's claws, declaring it was a clear path as he carved through the horde, shredding them all down while the girl looked on, confused. Yuere told her to find an opportunity to jump into the car. Zhao Heng continued to demolish everything in his way. He neared the container and yelled for the girl to get in. She leaped into the back, and Yuere said it was time to leave. The rescued girl slowly climbed inside, asking about their identities. The big man grinned, saying they were the cavalry. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Yabai was enduring a brutal beating, as usual. Once more, he was thrown hard against the wall. The monster moved in for the final, fatal blow, but Yabai shielded his face, knowing he could not look at it. The only issue was that his faceplate had been shattered in the previous fight, rendering it completely useless now. The creature prepared an attack that nearly struck him. He unleashed another laser, but the damn thing was too swift. Once again, he was hit by its powerful tail. He fell into the pool like a fool, realizing his carelessness. He sank into the water as the creature prepared another strike. The trouble was that now his body was completely immobilized. Spikes began to pierce the bottom of the pool, and he wondered if he was about to meet his end here. But in that instant, a bright light shone and blinded the creature. Man, it was the big guy arriving in the Batmobile, declaring that the apocalyptic rescue team was here. The monster appeared completely disoriented. It changed its mind and attempted to flee. But Yabai's massive hand snatched its tail. He asked where it thought it was escaping to. He hurled it back down into the water, delivering a crushing punch, and told the big guy if the creature so much as looked at him to just blast it with a laser. The big guy confirmed that he understood. Before the creature could even react, Yabai fired a laser right into its stomach. The poor thing collapsed to the ground, trembling. He grabbed his own head and demanded to know what this mutant was doing here. He wanted to know if she'd been sent by the organization to kill him. The woman just stared blankly, and he told her to open her mouth or he would crush her head. At that moment, she reacted to the mention of the secret organization. Lena became frantic, saying she did not want to return to that place. The big guy asked how this girl had also become a monster. At that moment, the monster recognized the girl in the car and started to call her name Lena. Yabai told her to remain still or he would finish her off. Lena exited the car and began to ask if the creature was Annie. The creature under Yabai's hand kept calling out to her. The big guy mentioned to Yuere that maybe she was another person, mutated by the strange black material. Lena approached and asked her sister how she ended up like this. The girl explained that she had been subjected to experiments by an organization. She had no idea of the agony she was feeling. Yabai then told her to move aside, saying he'd end her suffering now. But Lena begged him not to kill her, because even transformed, she was still her beloved sister. Yahello stepped before Yabai and asked him to wait a moment. Yabai warned her to get out of his path, or he would smash that drone. Yahello pleaded, saying they had just been reunited, and he couldn't take her life. But the protagonist argued that someone who was transformed had an extremely volatile mind, making it far too dangerous to leave her alive. Even so, Lena wouldn't budge and kept crying with her sister. Yahello begged Yabai to at least let them talk to see what happens. But Yabai reminded her this creature had nearly killed him, and there was no way he'd let her just walk away alive. However, the big guy suggested Yabai thank her, because if not for her, he would not have arrived in time. With that, Yabai began to back away. He released the creature and walked off, calling them a group of fools. The monster got to her feet and asked if they were part of the secret organization. Yahello said no, that they were just traveling through the city looking for survivors. Annie then explained that after her mutation, she managed to escape. However, the organization kept on sending huge dogs to hunt her down. In this area, Yahello asked why she hadn't attacked Yabai, to which she replied that she was terrified and believed he was a part of the organization. She approached Lena, saying it was good to know she was safe, and that she had no desire to harm anyone there. Yahello seemed relieved and suggested that Annie join their crew. They were studying zombies at a nearby base, and maybe she could help. Lena asked if both of them could truly be a part of that, and Yahello said it would be a pleasure to assist others. The only problem, of course, was that the monster would not fit inside the car. Annie told Lena that she would follow her anywhere she went. The big guy asked Yahello if she was certain about bringing a monster like this to their home. She replied with confidence they were just two sisters in danger, and helping them was their shared responsibility. Yabai just got into the car and sat down. Seeing this, the big guy said that since Yabai didn't refuse, it is time to head back. So with the car, the drone, and the monster, they all departed. The big guy was amazed that the creature could move as fast as them. A while later, they arrived at the base. Naturally, the doctor and Tang were stunned to see the creature before them. They immediately asked Yabai what was happening. Lena introduced herself, explaining that she lived in the east. But when the disaster began, she and her sister took a car and drove to the south. From the creature's head, Annie emerged. Lena introduced her, saying she was captured by an organization and was turned into an experiment. While the old man was terrified of the organization, Tang found it absolutely adorable. She approached the creature, telling her not to be afraid, that she only wanted to touch her a little. But the creature flapped its fins, and Tang became concerned. The monster moved to the side and dove into the pool. Tang wondered if the creature was experiencing some anxiety. The big guy asked how the two of them had survived here, since there was no food and it was just the two of them. Lena explained that for a while, a man had been guiding them and helping them escape the zombies, but he suddenly disappeared, and they had been waiting there for him ever since. The big guy asked who this bold person was who helped them survive all the zombies. She explained that the person had given them clothes covered in zombie guts, saying it would hide their sin, which was why they had not been discovered. Immediately, the big guy began to imagine this might be Yahello's father. At that moment, Yahello called out and asked if this person had short hair and was named Yao Yipping. Lena said yes and realized Yahello was the girl from before. That's when Yahello said that Yao Yipping was her father, and then fainted on the spot. Tang helped her up and asked why she had escaped from the hospital. The big guy looked at Yabai and asked why they didn't go back and search for her father. But Yabai replied that once night fell, things would become more dangerous outside, and he needed to reinforce his mecha. At that moment, the old man approached and said it was time for Yabai to give a thorough explanation, because he seemed to know everything. He had no idea why Yabai was hiding all these secrets, or what the danger was in telling the truth. The big guy added that if something truly happened to Yabai, no one else would be able to survive without his assistance. Yabai stayed quiet for a second and then said it was indeed time to share everything he knew with them. He told everyone that he was a traveler from 50 years in the future. The big guy instantly believed him, saying that. Now it all made sense why Yabai wasn't an ordinary person. The old man was shocked by this information and asked what kind of time travel Yabai was referring to. Tang was amazed, saying that humans survived for over 50 years. Yabai explained that it all began with that single pearl, the very item that started the world's destruction, but also sparked the greatest technological leap they had ever witnessed. In studying the material, they found that it was possible to send a person's consciousness back into the past. However, the person in the past had to be within the activation range of the item. The old man was completely horrified and Yabai explained that this was how they were able to return to the virus's origin. Unfortunately, though, they couldn't travel any earlier than that. He further explained that after years of study, they never found any similar material on Earth. This led them to believe it came from another world. The big guy immediately started to think that this might be an alien invasion. Yabai said that if that were true, the aliens had already won. In less than 50 years, there would be fewer than 10 million people left alive, and even those would have to fight constantly just to survive. In the end, Yabai had been chosen to return to the past and reshape everything. The big guy now understood why Yabai was so determined to get the material from the very start and asked how old Yabai truly was. He replied that he was likely approaching 70 by now. However, every time he traveled back to the past, he found himself at the first moment he met the virus. In school, the issue was that even in the past, it was not so easy to change things. The big guy was amazed, saying, "You could write an entire novel with that information. Who would have ever thought?" Tang asked if they were destined allies in the future. Yabai replied that he was not certain, but he certainly hoped so. Confused, Zhao Heng asked why Yabai was saying that, and if more changes were about to happen. Our hero just looked at Tang and said the virus was evolving. She must have surely noticed it. Tang confirmed, saying that their very survival was already a miracle. That's because the zombie virus was not transmitted by a bite, but was spread freely through the air. Immediately, the two of them jumped up in total shock, asking how they had not been transformed. Tang explained that's why she liked to call them the chosen ones. Some people appeared to have certain antibodies that allowed them to withstand the virus, but she could not guarantee that a bite wouldn't cause a mutation. Yabai revealed that the truth was they had all been infected a very long time ago. In theory, they would all eventually become zombies as well. Even though they might be immune to the airborne virus, that didn't mean they couldn't be infected by other methods. Zhao Heng was amazed that Yabai had managed to conceal all of this for so long. Yabai said that he had done so because he had only recently confirmed his suspicion. It seemed that someone from the future was accelerating the advancement of the virus. This group was known as the Black Order. The scene switches back to Jubo. Turns out Jubo was a man, after all. Up until this point, I had believed it was a woman. He truly managed to return to his normal form. I had thought the blonde guy was just lying to him. Jubo smiled, saying that now he was an official member of the squad. He was thrilled, saying they were absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, a white-haired girl watched through a window. Back with Yabai, he explained that in this new timeline, people were mutating into creatures much faster than usual. Furthermore, the first zombie evolution was supposed to happen weeks from now, but this time, it happened much sooner. Moreover, he had encountered psychic monsters today, which were created by this same Black Order. He suspected that this group had likely sent back some agents from the future. The big guy then asked why the Black Order possessed so many weapons and knowledge, but didn't seem interested in saving humanity. Yabai explained that this group believed that people with superpowers were a type of gift from destiny. Their goal was to completely annihilate all of humanity, leaving only the ability users. Zhao Heng found all of this a bit confusing and said, it sounded pretty ridiculous. The old man suddenly remembered something and said that the black box Zhao Heng had found contained some pills, and when he analyzed them, he found the same material inside. It appeared to be a catalyst for something, and he wondered if it was connected to the Black Order. Yabai said, they were likely contaminating people's water with a virus, which would explain why so many people were transformed. The big guy mentioned Yuere's father's car was filled with those items, so perhaps he was part of the group. Yabai said they would look into that later. But for now, the important thing was that as long as the Black Order existed, humanity would not be able to survive. He then displayed a map with the changes he wanted to make to increase their chances of surviving a major attack. He asked Tang to keep on taking care of Yuere. In turn, asked if Yabai was her brother by any chance. Yabai asked if that would be an issue, and she said it was just a medical question. He replied that it had nothing to do with that, and told the big guy to go back and help Tang and the old man prepare everything. Back inside the room, Yuere slowly woke up. She got up and saw Lena sleeping beside her. With that, she exited the room and began to walk down the hall. In one of the rooms, Tang was saying that Yabai did not seem to be lying about his story. She drank something and slumped down over the table, saying she had hoped all the problems would end, but they were only getting worse. At that moment, Yuere appeared beside her. The doctor asked what Yuere was doing here, and told her to go back to her bed. However, Yuere said she could not sleep and wanted to go outside for a while. Tang replied that everyone was sleeping, and soon Yabai would be back from searching for her father, so there was no reason to worry. Yuer then said she had heard her talking with someone, and asked who else was present. Tang responded that it seemed she had heard correctly. She gestured to a head and said, "It's him." Yuer, startled, asked why she was talking to a zombie. The head belonged to a childhood friend of hers who was a fool. Yuer was confused, so Tang explained that he was a very kind-hearted man, and that Yuer couldn't imagine why he wanted to become a doctor. He was rejected numerous times, but kept on studying until he finally succeeded. In the end, he was the only one who remained by her side. When many people at the hospital tried to steal her work, he stood up and told everyone the truth. When the disaster struck, he was the only one who used his own body to save her. Even as he was fighting and being mutated, he continued to protect her. In the end, there were so many pieces on the floor that she didn't even know which ones belonged to him. Even so, she gathered up the pieces in the hopes that if she combined them with future tech, she might be able to bring him back to life. She then laughed and said that she was joking. She knew that life was not that simple. Yuer awkwardly asked if she had loved that person. Tang revealed that, strangely enough, he was the only person who had ever captured her heart. She then told Yuer to go back to her rest, because she would need to speak with Annie later. Meanwhile, outside, Yuer went to go and see Annie. Annie rose from the water and stood face to face with her. They stared at each other for a moment, and Yuer introduced herself, asking how Annie was doing. Annie explained that she always had to remain hidden because she could not afford to be found by the organization. Yuer said that what had been done to her body was cruel and asked if it was painful. Annie responded that just thinking of the past gave her chills, but nowadays she did not feel anything at all. Yuer was thoughtful for a moment, and Annie said she could tell that Yuer also seemed to be in pain. She gently touched Yuer and asked how she could possibly tell. As the monster was about to say that humans are all alike, she suddenly passed out. Annie caught her with her fins and called out for Tang. Tang came running, panicked, asking what Yura was doing out here. When she had told her to go back to her bed, Tang touched Yura's forehead and said that at this rate, there was no way to save her if she kept acting this way. But Yura simply apologized and said she had a request. She wanted the doctor's help to complete the surgery. Meanwhile, Yabai was working on Optimus Prime 2.0. At the same time, in the city, Yuer's father was now searching for Annie and Lena. He didn't know where they had gone, and wondered if they had been attacked by the zombies. It was strange, since he had protected the area well, and there shouldn't have been any creatures nearby. Not to mention the massive tire tracks on the street. He had no idea what had just passed through here. Suddenly, wings flapped in the sky, and when he looked up, a large dragon was flying by. The creature circled the building, and he felt relieved. However, at that moment, a man with a blue beard appeared, saying he had finally found him. Back at the lab, Yuer was inside a tank. Outside, Yabai and the old man were observing everything. Jiang commented that he was uncertain about using that item to try and cure her, but Yabai explained they just needed time for it to work. He had gathered the right amount of the pearl's energy, and as long as Tang followed the procedure, everything should proceed smoothly. Of course, some negative reactions could occur, but at least she would be saved. The old man asked if they did this many experiments in the future. To know all of this, Yabai explained this type of cure was known as the elixir of immortality and was sold to the elite. Back then, while it was effective in curing diseases, the idea of eternal life was still a myth since it didn't last long. The old man said that with a name like that, it sounded even more believable. Yabai then explained this was the last conservative choice they had. After this, they would have to use the material entirely and see what happens. The old man then said that now everything made complete sense. That's why Zhao Hang was back out there on the streets, searching for her father. He warned Lena that the place was full of zombies and told her to check the right side. With that, she started to deploy the drone, but apologized because she was not very familiar with it. Trying to keep track of all those camera feeds was hard for her, as she considered herself to be a bit of an airhead. That's what she told herself. Zhao Heng told her to stay focused, saying they would soon find her father. At that moment, Lena mentioned that she had seen someone who looked like him on the street in front of the drone. They could see a hooded man running, looking desperate. He was fleeing this time from a swarm of rank 1 zombies. His cloak wasn't working, so he removed it and threw it aside. Behind him, attached to the cloak, was a grenade that went off, right in front of the swarm of zombies. The problem was, none of it was effective. The zombie was walking right through the flames until a laser came and cut through it and two others. Immediately, Zhao Heng performed a drift, stopping right before the man, who looked confused. The big guy opened the car door and asked if he was Yao Yuer's father. He appeared bewildered, but our bald friend just told him to get in the car quickly. As there was no time to explain, since the man had just been saved, he decided to get in, especially because the streets were not safe anymore. With that, the car sped away. However, the blue-bearded man was watching all of this. He asked the blonde guy if he was truly going to let the man escape so easily. The blonde said they all belonged to a very special group, so they would have to be cautious and take things very seriously. The blue-bearded man, however, said that his style was more about showing up and smashing it all, instead of playing with little tricks. But the blonde guy reminded him that, unfortunately, they had very few people remaining on their side. That was thanks to the girl, who had used a horde of zombies to attack their base, but ended up getting them all killed. The blue-bearded man found it strange that the girl, who had such a high-level ability to command 1,000 zombies, had lost to that base. The blonde guy replied that it was a truly sad situation, as they could not revive any of the zombies they had lost. Meanwhile, the car was arriving back at the base. Jiang appeared worried and asked if it was truly Yipping. Yuer's father simply replied that it had been a very long time since they had seen each other, and he apologized for having caused so much trouble. However, old Jiang said they should thank the heavens that he was still alive. He then told him to go inside and get cleaned up, while they checked on the girl. The next scene shifted to Yipping, looking absolutely terrified, seeing Yuer inside of a capsule. He asked what had happened to her. The grandfather explained that when Zhao Heng brought the girl, she was fine, but recently her illness had been worsened, and what made it even harder was that she had been pushing herself to the very limit to try and locate her father. At that moment, Yipping felt completely devastated, saying he should have come back sooner. The old man told him to calm down, because there was still much to uncover. First, he gave him a box and asked where he got it from. Yipping knew they had found it inside his car, but said he had no idea what it was. Jiang then asked how he had obtained it. He explained he had spoken with a man named Luo from a group they called the Black Group, which at first seemed like a charitable organization. He had received these drugs, which were supposed to be able to help Yuer, but he never imagined the true nature behind it. The old man asked if he was part of this group and what the drugs were really for. Yipping explained that these drugs had caused many emergencies in the city, and when he discovered the organization's true nature, he wanted to get out. He had continued working with the group, hoping that one day he could escape and return to Yuer. However, when he fled the place and came back, he had been swarmed by a huge horde. But in the end, this still happened to her. He told himself that he had always taught her to show love and kindness. He had been helping the wrong people. He began to lament, saying he was a truly incompetent father. That's when Tang appeared and told him that Yuer was still alive and fighting. She then told him to donate some of his blood, since he was her biological father. Unfortunately, no one else here could donate to her, so he was now their only hope. Immediately, Yipping extended his arm and told her to take as much blood as she needed. The doctor cheered, saying it was a good thing he arrived, or else she would have had to use that material on the girl. The father looked confused and immediately shouted that he would not allow that to happen. The doctor was puzzled as to why, and Jiang wanted to know what he understood about it. Yipping explained that he was not sure why, but the organization was planning a massive experiment. Their target was the entire city of Anshan, and countless lives would be lost. Jiang said it didn't matter much, since most of the population was already dead, so there were not many people left to lose anyway. The father insisted they must not use the material on the girl, no matter what. Jiang, however, argued that the only way to fight against those guys was by using the material, and besides, they had nowhere else to run. Yipping, desperate, said they needed to escape this place as fast as possible. He rushed out, saying he would grab Yuer and leave, but then he was struck on the back of the neck. Yabai simply told him to be quiet. The poor man collapsed, unconscious, onto the floor. Yabai then turned and told him to collect the blood and start the surgery. Meanwhile, in another area of the city, which was completely untouched, something was happening inside of a bar. There was Bluebeard, a long-haired man, asked how they had all come to join the secret group. Bluebeard says he only joined because all of his comrades had died, so he was left all alone. The blonde guy next to him said that he needed to protect all the people he still had with him. The man at the counter said he understood and commented that if they could become new allies, that would be truly incredible. He just expected there to be more people in this secret group. Bluebeard told him not to worry, that there were plenty of members, but they were out recruiting more people. Meanwhile, the blonde guy said he was curious about what kind of society the superhumans would build. They didn't need to eat, could switch to a combat mode, and were not even afraid of the zombies. However, he had a feeling it would be hard to get people to unite. Now, Bluebeard said he agreed with all of that. And for now, they would just wait for the consultant's responses. But the blonde guy asked if he truly thought it was okay to keep on getting information from someone from the future. Without hesitation, Bluebeard said it was the best choice, since she knew everything that was about to happen. He told the guy, whose name was Yufeng, that he had heard from the consultant that this blonde guy would become very strong in the future. However, Yufeng commented that if Yebai also came from the future, why wasn't he interested in becoming a superhuman? Now that I've realized it, guys, this Yufeng is that blonde friend of the protagonist from the beginning, the one who became the albino beast. Bluebeard said that Yebai was not doing so well and was just a coward who couldn't handle the success of others. However, the blonde guy said that the last time he saw the boy, he was completely different from what he remembered. Bluebeard laughed, saying that at least whoever wronged Yebai in the future would likely suffer in this current life. But one thing was certain, they would have to eliminate Yebai, since he was interfering with all of their plans. Someone then clapped their hands and said that he had said everything he wanted to hear. It was the blonde guy with the hat who said that the world Yebai wanted to create was completely different from theirs. For now, they were still trying to inspire the boy and create a change in him, but if he did not accept it, they would obviously have to kill him. Everyone in this room had been born from the black gold. They had forsaken their old bodies and accepted a new rebirth. They needed to dive even deeper into the mysteries of this item to gain a power that was never before seen in this race. The guys even had a little motto, saying that the Shadow Squadron was eternal. These bastards also had 30 different names. For goodness sake, back at the base, the big guy was sleepy, and our boy was fixing the car. He asked Yabai where his friends from the future were. Since they were younger back then, they must be just kids now. Yabai just said that the present and the future had changed, so whether his friends were even still alive was a mystery. Besides, in this new life, he might never meet them again. The big guy then asked how he was going to rebuild the organization he wanted. Yabai said he didn't require specific allies, but rather people who shared the same vision. Confused, Zhao Heng asked what that vision was. Yabai then explained that the goal was to erase the black gold and the supernatural people and restore the natural order to humanity. The big guy said those were simple things to describe, but extremely difficult to actually achieve. However, Yabai then explained what had happened to future generations who had grown dependent on the black gold. To maintain all their powers, they needed to build zombie concentration camps where people would be transformed to create more materials. The problem was that in a regime like this, the number of people kept on decreasing. Those with supernatural powers did not want to fight against. His group was the very last of the rebels, who still tried to oppose that regime. Zhao Heng then remarked that, for someone who wanted to eliminate black metal, Yabai was very good at using it to create things.